Kun Béla takes flight. Kun Béla fled the country by aeroplane. In the afternoon, around 5 o'clock, a plane rose up from the vicinity of the Soviet house, quartered in the Hotel Hungarian, flew across the Danube, over Castle Hill, and with a daring turn, headed toward the Vermező. The People's Commissar himself was at the controls. He flew low, barely 20 meters up, so that one could even make out his face. He was pale, unshaven, as usual. He grinned down at the citizens below, and with impish malice, mockingly, even waved farewell to a few of them. He carried pastries from Zerbo, which he had stuffed into his bulging pockets, along with jewels, precious stones belonging to countesses, baronesses, pious charitable ladies, church chalices, and many other treasures besides. Heavy gold chains dangled from his arms. One such gold chain, when the aeroplane swooped upward and vanished into the distant sky, actually dropped into the very center of the Vermező, where an elderly gentleman, an old Christina district burgher, a tax official in the castle on Zenaromság tér, a certain Pats by name, Patskaro József, found it. At least that was the talk in the Christina. His Excellency, the Comrade, and her Ladyship. When news of this spread on the afternoon of 31st July 1919, at 6 o'clock, Vizi Cornell called out,
Katika!
In the kitchen stood a girl, plump as a stuffed pigeon. She appeared to be getting ready for her evening out. She was already fully dressed. She wore a pink blouse, a white skirt, a black waxed canvas belt, new patent leather shoes. She studied herself in a hand mirror, sprinkled rice powder on her handkerchief, and with it smeared her pudgy, soft face. She heard the shouting, but did not stir. Their doorbell had broken long ago, back during the Karoli era, and since then, they could only shout for the servants like this, or knock from the study, which was separated from the kitchen by a thin partition wall. The voice shouted angrily. At this, the girl crossed the long, narrow entrance hall, inspected herself in the coat rack mirror, adjusted her hair, and swaying her round behind, swaggered into the dining room. On the dining room divan, a man of about 40 was lounging, as unkempt as a vagabond. He wore a crumpled soft shirt without a tie, baggy-kneed winter trousers, shabby shoes. Only the aquiline nose and the black side whiskers framing his face indicated that he was, after all, somebody. In his hand he clutched the final issue of the Vörös Újság, held far from his eyes, all the way down at his knees, for he was severely far-sighted. He was so absorbed in his reading that he did not immediately notice the maid. The articles were already announcing the impending collapse, under headlines such as "The Proletarian Homeland," "In Peril." Katika stepped closer to the divan.
Well, what is it?
Vizi grumbled irritably.
How many times do I have to shout?
And to soften his severity, he shrugged as he lay there. The girl stared indifferently at the toe of her patent leather shoe.
Very well,
said Vizi, as if arguing with himself, indulgently yet sternly.
Close all the windows.
Katika started to go.
Wait, the shutters too, and the blinds. Understood?
Then he added,
They shouted up.
He tossed aside the Vörös Újság. The wretched straw paper rustled, brownish and smoky, as though it had been scorched by some world conflagration. Vizi rose from the divan, and thrusting both hands into his trouser pockets, looked out through the open dining room window. Down below, the Red Guard soldier who had shouted up moments before was pacing, but already so alone and forsaken that he no longer inspired hatred. He was a puny, stunted proletarian, resembling not so much a human being as an embryo, upon whose shoulder a bayoneted rifle had been propped. The dusk undulated over the burnt, trampled grass of the Vermező, as it always did, gilding the Istenhegyi, the Janoszegi, and in the distance, meaningfully catching the glint of a church cross. Near the granite stairway, clusters of 2 or 3 stood about. The startled human flock, suddenly left without a shepherd, whispering, as they had lately learned to do, with deaf-mute signs, reading words from the movement of lips. This alone marked the change, not a cloud anywhere. A drowsy air weighed on everything, as before the breaking of summer storms, when the wind holds its breath and nature takes on the aspect of an enormous room, the trees of playthings and human beings of wax figurines. In this paralysis, there was neither movement nor sound. Only one image moved and howled, that poster which screamed, "To arms, to arms," that wild, deranged sailor shaking a banner with incredible force, merging with it entirely, his bony mouth gaping as though he meant to swallow the world. Vizzy had often passed by this poster, but in truth had never dared to look at it properly. One might say he was looking at it now for the first time calmly, without dazzlement, the way we look at the setting sun when it no longer hurts our eyes. Far off, on the Christina Carute, a lorry hurtled inward at the speed of a fire engine, loaded with its gaudy cargo of children returning from a mass excursion to the Zuglaget, waving branches and gesturing with their hands. From the direction of the hill came the sound of singing, thin and reedy, in unison. "Arise, arise, ye prisoners of the earth. Arise, arise, ye hungry proletariat." Young workers, apprentice boys, 10 or 15 of them, were belting it out now with truly selfless obliviousness. What they had been taught, the Internationale. Katika had already finished in the other rooms and now closed the window in the dining room too. When every window in the flat was shut, Vizzy stepped over to Katika and with a kind of feverish, sugary little smile, whispered,
They've fallen.
The maid showed no interest in the matter, or did not let on, but her master positioned himself before her. Since his wife had not yet come home, he was looking for someone to pour out his heart to.
Katika,
he repeated.
the Reds have fallen.
The maid answered only with an astonished look that her master should deem her worthy of such confidence.
The scoundrels.
Vizzy added, his nostrils flaring with the sweet intoxication of revenge. No sooner had he uttered this than there came a pounding at the outer door. Vizzy turned pale. He stared into the air, as if searching for the word he had just spoken, and wanting to erase its trace, reached after it, the way one waves away cigarette smoke.
I'll go,
he said, and with sudden resolve went to the entrance hall to open the door, as if rushing to meet the danger. He walked with the bearing of a man prepared for anything. This ran through his mind. Hostage-taking, house search, revolutionary tribunal, and what he would bring forward in his defense. 20 years of public service, a social conscience, Marxism, which he approved of in principle, just not its extreme excesses. He was already a different man. He no longer felt himself a martyr of Bolshevism, but rather a victim of the old order, which had, it must be said, often passed him over with ingratitude. In the pocket of his jacket, he fingered his trade union card. Fortunately, he had not yet torn it up, as he had intended to do that afternoon. A little man stood before him in the corridor, wearing a postman's jacket with red piping, its collar cozily unbuttoned.
Your Excellency!
The little man bellowed, loudly enough for the entire building to hear.
Your Excellency.
Comrade.
Vizzy greeted him.
Well, it's you, Comrade.
Your humble servant, Your Excellency.
Come in, Comrade Fixor.
Thus they conversed with true world historical courtesy, both of them uncertain, each deferring to the other. Vizzy Cornell, ministerial counselor, was hearing his old title for the first time in 4 months. He felt a small pleasure, but also a small disappointment, that it was not those whose arrival he had already steeled himself for. Fixor, meanwhile, caretaker of the building at 238 Attila Utka, was mortified that the building's owner was still addressing him as Comrade. The caretaker stepped into the entrance hall and extended his hand to His Excellency. Vizzy shook his hand. During the proletarian dictatorship, it was Vizzy who had initiated the handshaking. Afterwards, it was always Fixor who offered it first, out of solicitude.
They've fallen.
Fixor exulted, still loudly.
The villains have fallen. They're already packing up.
Vizzy murmured, as though hearing a piece of news.
Yes, Your Excellency. The national tricolour is already flying over the castle. My brother-in-law put it up.
The important thing,
Vizzy replied evasively.
is that there should finally be peace and order.
The lovely red, white and green.
Fixor nodded, continuing his patriotic reverie, glancing sideways at Vizzy's impassive face.
There'll be a reckoning, Your Excellency. There'll be a reckoning now.
Vizzy watched the poor wretches floundering, but kept his distance and did not reply. Fixor grew flustered.
The thing is,
He stammered.
the doorbell. I'd have a bit of time now. I thought I'd fix it for Your Excellency.
The battery box is over there.
Vizzy gestured toward the kitchen.
I know, Your Excellency.
Fixor smiled. He considered it a painful insult, even to suggest that he, the caretaker, might not know where the landlord's battery box was.
I just need a ladder.
Katika, in her fine Sunday clothes, brought the ladder with ill grace. They maneuvered it into place with some difficulty in the cramped, cheerless kitchen, which received light only from the air shaft and was dark even in daytime. Fixor wanted to switch on the electric light, but the bulb had burnt out long ago. He asked for a candle. Candle in hand, he clambered up to the battery box and from the top of the ladder explained to the landlord what ailed the bell. He spoke with self-importance, exaggerating the merit and value of his work, yet with humble deference, by which he was evidently trying to smooth over the awkward circumstance that he was, at this moment, standing so high above His Excellency. Atop the swaying ladder, which Katika held steady, he threw himself eagerly into the work. He wanted to make up in one stroke for all he had neglected. He fiddled with the battery cells, lifted them out one by one, placed them on the kitchen table. He scraped the rusty wires with his penknife. He put kitchen salt into the jars, poured in water. At that moment, there was another rattling at the door. A tall, elegant lady entered in a lilac dressing gown, bareheaded.
I kiss your hand, Your Ladyship.
Fixor bowed from the kitchen, and when he received no reply again,
I kiss your hand.
The woman did not return his greeting even then. She turned her head away and went into the dining room. Vizzy followed her. There he embraced his wife. His irrepressible joy broke through. He was grinning with delight.
Do you know?
Everything. They say the occupation may come as early as tonight. The Romanians.
Nonsense. The great powers won't allow it. It will be an international occupation. Italians, French, English. Tatar Gabor said so.
The woman smoothed her beautiful amber-yellow hair. She sank into the rocking chair. She gazed vacantly before her, as was her habit, through objects, through people, as if she were not seeing what was in front of her, but something else entirely.
Where have you been? I was worried.
Running about, for this.
Said Vizine, and while slowly rocking in the chair, she opened her cotton-gloved hand, from which she tossed a small parcel wrapped in newspaper onto the table.
What is it?
Butter.
The woman said, with a contemptuous little smile.
For 3 handkerchiefs.
Fixor was clanking about in the kitchen, climbing back up the ladder to replace the battery cells. Vizine listened toward the kitchen. With a tilt of her head, she asked,
What does he want here?
He's fixing the doorbell.
Now he thinks of it. For 4 solid months we begged.
He offered of his own accord.
Why didn't you throw him out?
Oh, come now.
But yes, you should kick out the lights of him. A red.
Quieter. He'll hear.
So what? He's not a red, perhaps? Filth? A Bolshevik? Just you wait.
Vizzy did not yet consider the time ripe for that. The woman, however, leapt up with an energy one would not have expected and went to the entrance hall to dismiss the caretaker. At that very instant, the long-abandoned, long-dead electric doorbell shivered to life throughout the flat. Triumphantly and ceremoniously, sharply and brightly it rang, awakening vitality, awakening hope. This fresh, cheerful steel trill poured spirit into her, penetrated every wall, roused the whole flat to consciousness. Vizzy, inside the dining room, listened with delight. His wife looked for Katika, but saw that she had once again slipped out for the night without a word.
Done!
Fixor announced, and bent down, caught her hand, and this time succeeded in kissing it. He carried back the ladder. Then, sensing that the doorbell and the hand kiss were not yet sufficient, with reckless familiarity, like one sharing a secret, he stepped close to her and all but whispered into her ear.
Your ladyship,
He cast his eyes to the floor.
there's a girl,
What?
a servant girl.
Vizine thought her ears were ringing, that she had misheard. She looked at the caretaker with deep, unconcealed interest. Her eyes lit up. She could not have felt greater joy had she been promised a diamond necklace.
From Pest?
She asked.
Goodness no, from the Balaton region. A peasant girl, a relative of mine.
The woman grew excited. She had always dreamed of girls procured under the table like this, but no one had ever offered her one. She would have considered it a sin to discuss so important a question in haste, so she motioned the caretaker into the kitchen, sat him down at the table, and there by the flickering candlelight she interrogated him, conferred with him at length, entirely forgetting about her husband. She showed Fixer out herself. Then she returned to the kitchen. With her fingertips, she picked up Katika's handkerchief from the table, sniffed it, tossed it to the floor in disgust, pushed aside the hand mirror, closed the window overlooking the air shaft, and set about preparing supper. She toasted bread and boiled water for tea. A sour supper. Vizine, seeing that there was no one at the outer door, went into the dining room.
What are you doing?
Just trying it.
Said Vizzy.
It rings.
I can hear.
He fixed it?
You can hear.
I hope you didn't tell him anything.
No, stop it.
The woman snapped, for Vizzy was still pressing the doorbell button.
What are you playing at? You're like a child.
I'm hungry. I'd like to have supper.
But who are you ringing for?
For Katika?
Her ladyship left ages ago.
Where?
Where? Where she always goes. Gallivanting.
Now?
Yes, now.
But nobody is allowed in the streets today.
As if she cares. Lajos has come back.
Hack?
Hack, with the barge.
And when is she coming home?
She didn't confide in me. Around midnight, Vizine burst out, and to work herself up further, exaggerated, around dawn, perhaps.
Did she take a key?
I think so.
Charming, I must say.
Said Vizzy.
Absolutely charming. Sleeping with the door unlocked. She could bring in anyone.
How interesting you are. You act as though this were the first time. You're ridiculous. And she spun on her heel in irritation, slamming the door behind her the way Katika was in the habit of doing.
In the kitchen, she banged the crockery about, clattering. She sometimes needed these emotional outbursts. Having tired of discussing the great, never-ending trouble of their lives, together with her husband as an ally, she gave vent to her bitterness with such little revolts, presenting the matter for a few moments, at least to herself, as though her husband were the cause of it all. She carried supper in on a wooden tray, a cup of tea, a few slices of toast, the butter she had procured that afternoon. Vizzy, who at noon had eaten only creamed marrow and a morsel of beef liver, glanced at the weak grass-green tea, at the dubious black-yellow maize bread that even toasting had failed to improve. He inquired with a sour expression.
Nothing else?
What would there be?
You're not even setting the table?
We don't usually in the evening.
Never mind.
Vizzy conceded.
This will do.
He buried his face in his hands, as he did whenever something was not right, in the household. For a long time he did not speak. In his mind, he was already yearning for the white tablecloth, the rose-patterned porcelain plates, the silver cutlery, the cut crystal wine decanters that once upon a time had gleamed on this table when they gave dinners for his friends from the ministry.
Aren't you eating?
He pressed his wife. Vizine seldom took supper. For years she had suffered from a nervous stomach complaint. Her illness had worsened during the Bolshevik period from all the agitation. She felt acidity in her stomach. She took out a paper box, stuck out her anemic tongue, placed 3 dark green pills upon it, washed them down with a glass of water, and shuddered. All the more eagerly her husband set to. With a healthy man's voracity, he crunched between his teeth the dried, bitter-sweet slices of maize bread, onto which he soon spread the 50 grams of butter. But already everything was gone. His eyes gleamed with hunger. He stirred his tea, dropped saccharin into it. The absence of sugar, he had grown fond of saccharin too. At least it was sweet. While he slurped his tea noisily, he recounted his encounter with his colleague Tatar Gabor, from whom he had learned in Uriutka that it was over, that at last it was over for social production, for revolutionary consciousness. They would no longer harass the decent, hard-working bourgeoisie. Vizy hated the Reds with boundless fury, and he had every reason to. Under Bolshevism, he had gone hungry. As soon as the Commune broke out, he was placed on the reserve list. His salary, admittedly, in the chaos then prevailing, they had forgotten to suspend, but what could he buy with it? The war had ruined him. Right at the start, he had invested his entire fortune in war bonds, 250,000 gold crowns, because he believed absolutely in the victory of German arms. Only his 2-story house remained, and even that brought in no income. They themselves occupied the first floor, 4 rooms. The 2 flats on the second floor were let to his family doctor, Movister Miklos, and to Druma Szilard, a young lawyer. The Reds had communalized his house. This building, situated right next to Mozdony Utica, had in any case attracted the attention of the Lenin boys. They had taken Druma Szilard as a hostage, and he sat in the central prison for 2 months. Old Movister, the clerical doctor, they perpetually harassed. The first time they came to the Vizis was when they arrested his wife. His wife had shaken out a tablecloth on the balcony, and they accused her of signaling to the counter-revolutionaries. They dragged her off to the Parliament building and did not release her until midnight, broken in body and soul. The next morning, a young political commissar came up to their flat, pulled a walking stick from his leather gaiter, and flicked it jauntily about the rooms and requisitioned 2 of their rooms, the dining room where they now sat and the salon beside it. Fortunately, they fell before they could send in tenants. But what pained him most of all was being condemned to idleness at the ministry. A fierce political ambition dwelt within him, and starved of fuel, it rattled on like an empty mill. During those miserable months, he had merely drifted. He was a morose, distrustful civil servant. Before all this, he had never confided in his wife about anything. Now his tongue loosened. On the long walks in the Buda Hills, or here, while they waited for those dreadful visitors, he delivered lectures to her on his political platforms and on those upstarts who had blighted the ministry. It was not so easy to put all this behind one. Having finished his tea, he paced up and down, speaking of the counter-revolutionary events which had suddenly acquired a reassuring, historical patina.
Do you remember?
He kept asking.
Do you remember?
He invoked acquaintances who had been hanged, the civil servant who had handed out leaflets in churches and was executed for it in the square before the Parliament, the military cadets, the heroic cadets, whom those good-for-nothings had mocked as counter-revolutionary whelps.
And the monitors. When they stormed up the Danube, trailing dark plumes of smoke, I was just shaving. We thought the communists were shooting. We ran up to the Tatars, watched from the attic window. Along the Danube embankment, people were swarming like ants. That's when they killed poor Berendt, the famous pediatrician.
He paused for a moment, then went on.
The Corpus Christi procession was something else. Some bespectacled Soviet type on a bicycle rode straight into the Blessed Sacrament, reviled it. They say he even spat on it. In an instant, they wrestled him to the ground, dragged him under the archway and beat him with fists and sticks until he gave up the ghost. Supposedly, a waiter struck the fatal blow.
But the most thrilling of all, the catalyst that started everything, was the Christina uprising. They had both witnessed it with their own eyes.
You only arrived when the swarthy, curly-haired terrorists were climbing down from the lorry and firing a volley at the church. The crowd fled screaming into the elementary school, where they were conscripting Red Guard soldiers. But you didn't see the beginning. I was there. It started, you see, with people waving handkerchiefs. The whole of Christina Ter was white. The trams stopped. Everyone took off their hats. They sang the hymnus. I shall never forget it. They tore down the red flag and burned it. Some blonde actress set it alight in front of the Maria pharmacy. Then we all ran home together. It was a grey, windy summer day. Ahead of us, a little girl was running, clutching her ivory-covered prayer book. Poor thing. She collapsed right in front of our building. The excitement was too much for her. She lay on our pavement for a long time, like a piece of wood. She was completely unconscious. You brought her a glass of water. Do you remember?
It was already a delight, simply to speak of these things so openly, so loudly. Vizzy, however, received no answer. His wife merely stared into the void with her wide, curious gray eyes. After a long silence, she spoke.
Tomorrow she'll be drowsy again.
Who?
Katika. She'll lie about like a dog till 9 again.
I see,
Said Vizzy, for he was still out there in the crowd, where history ferments and the iron dice of fate come thundering down.
Why did you let her go? Why aren't you a bit firmer with her?
As if I dare. She'll walk out on me.
She seized upon the word eagerly.
If only you'd seen the murderous looks she gave me the other day, when I hinted that perhaps she shouldn't go out every single evening.
Vizine suddenly sprang to her feet and, mimicking Katika's voice, whined.
If you like, I needn't come back at all. That's what the insolent creature said. Then she flounced out the door, and now she demonstrated like this, and she imitated Katika's walk as well.
Her husband stared at his wife for a moment, dumbfounded, as she danced across the room, performing in her fury like some peculiar actress on some peculiar stage. He pitied her, and to say something.
And what did you do?
What? What I always do. I swallowed it. I would have liked to kick her in that fat.
Well, yes, they're all like that.
All they do is stuff themselves,
The woman lamented.
with both cheeks, and carry on with soldiers. But this one...
She leaned toward her husband and whispered,
This one, I tell you, is ill as well. What's wrong with her?
That.
said Vizine meaningfully.
That's what's wrong with her. And she looked at him, aghast.
It doesn't show.
I've seen it on her undergarments.
But she's plump.
That's why she's so bloated. Her legs, those puffy calves, disgusting. And then her brother comes round too, that wild brother of hers, the engine driver. Terrifying. Our home is a veritable tavern. One is afraid in one's own home, a paid enemy. Oh, if only I never had to see that ugly blonde face again. It would be a deliverance. And the others?
Asked Vizzy absently.
Let it go. The others are no better.
Vizine drew a deep breath, wanting to protest, but for the moment swallowed her indignation. Never, as long as she could remember, had she seen such an abominable creature. This one was like a sloth, and brazen, and immoral, and indifferent, above all indifferent. She moved about the flat as though it were hers, as though she had no connection whatsoever to those who lived there. When asked in the morning what they should cook, she would insolently pout and reply only, "It's all the same to me." Who ever heard of such a thing? She never wanted to stand in queues. At Viatoris's, the grocer's, Vizine herself had to queue with the other filthy maids, standing guard for hours for 150 grams of lard until her legs gave out from exhaustion. Meanwhile, Katika went off to amuse herself with her beau, that repulsive tattooed bargeman, Hak Lahos, who lavished money on her, heaven knows from where. And she had tried speaking to her nicely, too, had scolded her, admonished her, given her orders, all in vain, in one ear and out the other, as if Katika cared that her mistress was so frail that she had lost 10 kilos from the trudging about to barter for food. This wretch couldn't have cared less, letting her work, run about, polish floors, the shameless thing. And then all the rest. She sank her hands into her lap and brooded with a martyr's face, as she did when she stewed alone. She pondered whether the others had really been any better.
The one who served before Katika? Certainly not. Herring Ludzika stole like a magpie.
She stole everything, but was fondest of handkerchiefs. She was dismissed at once. After that, Vizine did not hire a girl for 2 months. The pest factory girls generally steal. One had pilfered her gold watch, inherited from her late mother. Another had unpicked her duvets and made off with nearly 3 kilos of goose down. The peasant girls, like Varga Urzi, worked hard, but sent preserves and spices home to the country. And the eating. Good Lord, how they ate. They would have devoured the entire house. Even while cleaning, they would not put down their bread. True, from time to time a tolerable one turned up. But then her mother would not let her stay in service, or her aunt would turn her head and spirit her away within days. The Swabians? Clean, but unreliable. The Slovaks? Hard-working, but lustful. Carolyn had kept 2 lovers at once, an infantry corporal and a no longer young, well-known short story writer whom they found on the salon divan upon returning from their summer holiday. Who knows what lurks in them? Take Liddy, that ugly Liddy, that little nursemaid with her saucy wisp of a bun on the crown of her head. No one would have believed it. She was ugly as the night. Yet one morning she lay on the kitchen mattress, slippery with blood, fainted from blood loss, her face ashen, already convulsing, when the ambulance men carried her off at the last moment. She had had an illegal procedure performed on herself. She had taken up with anyone and everyone. When sent out for wine or beer, she would embrace men in the gateway. She was the demon of the Christina district's shop boys. Those who did not whore about caused enormous damage in other ways. One smashed the wash basin, another scorched the shirts while ironing, yet another warbled from morning to night, loitered in the Horvath garden, read theatrical magazines, daydreamed and conceived an idealistic passion for the tenor of the Buddha Summer Theater. This one gossiped, that one was picky, refused to eat vegetables, demanded cakes and roast meat like them. Another talked incessantly about her former place, where she was served boiled beef even for breakfast. Yes, Meunier Margit was another fine specimen. She touched objects only with her fingertips, as though afraid of soiling herself. Yet dirty she was, bless her soul. She loved filth. There was always a finger's thickness of dust on the furniture. Her glasses were sticky. She tossed the knives and forks into the drawer, greasy. Mercifully, she did not bless them with her presence for long. But others, too, left quickly. They barely warmed their seats. No one stayed longer than half a year. Okras Mihaine lasted only 2 hours. She preferred to return the deposit twofold. Vizine had tried everyone. She had taken a girl from the orphanage, intending to raise her. But that one was truly the height of insolence. She could not bear it for even 3 months. She thanked God when, after scandalous scenes, she was rid of her. And Mari, and Victor, and Ilona, Tulipan Ilona, and Emma, Zacharias Emma, and Boska, Rojas Boska? She pondered which one Rojas Boska had been. She saw women before her, blondes and brunettes, thin ones and fat ones, who over the course of her 20 years of marriage had passed through her house. She was already confusing them with one another. She found a head, but sought the body to match. For another body, however, the head was missing. She rummaged in this curious lumber room. Then she threw the whole lot together. It was no use holding this review. She found little consolation, could not recall a single decent maid. Every one of them had cheated her, abused her trust, and she had to begin again. The supplication, the hunt for a new girl, as though some curse of God were upon her. She had more or less to concede her husband was right, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. In the end, she came to rest on the latest, on Katika, the one she hated most because she always hated most the ones who were present, who through their very presence made her feel the full wretchedness of her lot. Her husband was still pacing the room, holding forth about tomorrow's meeting of civil servants who, in view of the new political situation, would take a stand. Vizine sat hunched, as though remote from everything. Her face darkened, but her features suddenly softened. A light radiated from her face, as though someone were shining a small laryngoscope lamp through it from within. She said,
There would be a new girl.
Splendid.
Vizzy tossed off.
Splendid!
The woman mocked him.
You're not even listening.
Of course I am. Who recommended her?
Fixor.
And when does she start?
For the time being, she's placed locally.
Where?
Here, not far. On Arok Utka.
With whom?
Some family called Bartos.
Who is this Bartos?
Vizzy mused.
Bartos. Let me think.
And he declared with surprise,
I don't know him.
Well, how would you? Vizine burst out. Today she could not abide her husband's tedious manner.
Why must you know everyone? You're impossible.
And what is this Bartek's occupation?
First of all, Bartos.
The woman corrected him.
Bartos. He's an inspector. Otherwise, I haven't the faintest idea what an inspector is.
A revenue officer, an excise man, one who heads a fiscal district. They send them to the provinces.
Yes, this one is always away too. A widower, with 2 children.
And the girl? A decent, upright, hard-working girl?
How should I know? I know as much as you do. Fixor claims she's excellent.
Then give Katika notice.
So I can be left on my own again? No, thank you.
Well then, don't give Katika notice.
Fixor.
The woman said firmly.
Has, for the time being, only informed me that it might be possible to get her. Might, she stressed. She'll have to be lured away. It's not so easily done these days. And besides, who knows? I may end up with someone worse.
Vizzy was weary of the argument, which went round in circles, but he too could not extricate himself from it.
Why don't you take someone else? You've had servants recommended to you before.
By whom?
By Movisterne.
Movisterne should hold her tongue. All she can do is commiserate. Oh, what a pity, my dear, that you're always struggling with these girls. Wait, I'll send you one. She's been stringing me along like that for 2 years. All she thinks about is the theatre, the dress rehearsals, and her Addy matinees.
And Drumane?
She, you know, is envious. She's happy that I'm in such trouble. She comes down here to gloat over Katika. Easy for her to talk. Her Steffi, mad though she is, does everything. She even nurses the baby. Movista Zetel has been in the doctor's service for 20 years, working for that sickly man. She even helps in the consulting room. The wife is never at home. She pays half the wages I pay Katika. The food is no better than ours, and yet the girl stays. God knows why. You need luck for that. For this, too, you need luck. As for everything, some people are lucky. We're not. I don't know what we've done. Ah!
She sighed, slowly pulling the tortoiseshell pins from her hair.
One just swallows one's bile, pays those enormous wages, struggles and struggles. It's not worth living.
Vizzy, too, grew gloomy. He proposed they go to bed. It was nearing 10. The light from the dining room seeped through the lowered shutters. It had to be switched off. The Red Guard soldier might see it. One night in July, he had fired a shot into their window.
Why don't you come?
Her husband urged, already undressing in the bedroom. But the woman just stood on the threshold of the bedroom, rigid.
Well,
Vizzy coaxed her in,
what's the matter? You're a bit nervous.
and he was amazed.
You're a child. Always these maids. Eternally the maids. What pettiness. Tell me, is it worth it? Over a maid? Aren't you ashamed of yourself?
Vizine came into the bedroom and made the beds. Only then did her husband notice she was weeping.
Angela.
He soothed her, and sitting on a chair, watched her arrange the pillows, the great glittering tears on her face. Like Asta Nielsen in the cinema.
Your nerves have been ruined by this terrible age, as have everyone's. No wonder. You need rest. But now it's over. A new era begins. An entirely new, happy era. Life will change. We shall live again. Today is no ordinary day. The 31st of July, 1919. A historic day.
Vizine tied a veil over her hair for the night. They both lay down in the wide conjugal beds, which for a long time now had served only for sleeping. Vizzy clicked the switch of the lamp. Darkness fell upon them, shadows undulated, the contours of the furniture merged with the walls. Vizzy sat up in bed, startled.
Cannon fire.
He whispered.
No.
Said Vizine, who had also sat up.
Yes, from the Vermezo.
Only the silence trembled now. Automobiles roared on the road, leading up to the castle. That road, which in times of political upheaval serves as the artery, measuring the nervousness of the city and the nation. Dogs barked.
Perhaps a car's tire.
Vizine offered.
Go to sleep.
In recent months, they had heard enough cannon fire at night. They could sleep through it, like soldiers at the front. After a few minutes, the woman spoke.
I think we really should give that girl a try.
We should give her a try.
Vizzy yawned.
Do as you please. Give her a try. Good night. Go to sleep.
For a while they lay side by side horizontally, undressed, beneath the thin summer quilts. Then a strange light kindled behind their closed eyelids. Abruptly they rose, parted from one another, passing through the walls of rooms, through the distances of years, wandering in different directions along paths unknown, even to themselves, now fully clothed in all manner of fantastical theatrical costumes. The everyday miracle occurred. They dreamed. Various agitations. Vizzy Cornell slept cautiously. He curled up like a hedgehog, so as to occupy as little space as possible. Sheltered behind the white cover of his pillows, he made ambiguous pronouncements, smiled at his mortal enemies, the revolutionaries. Even in his sleep he was scheming. When he opened his eyes in the morning, like those people whose lives have been transformed by some happy turn the previous day, he mechanically brooded over the bygone worry, for while he slept, he had forgotten what had happened the day before. Then upon his quilt, he rediscovered reality, recognized the already familiar joy, which in the meantime, having solidified, seemed newer, more interesting still. At this, he stretched out to his full length and sprang from the bed. On his night table, a glass of water glistened like liquid silver. He went out into the street without breakfast. Those who had seen him a few days earlier turned to stare. A figure from an old-fashioned plate had risen from the dead. He wore a dove-gray suit, a spotless white shirt, an impeccable tie. Left and right, acquaintances and strangers greeted him. Around his creaking button boots, the sunshine blazed like a hand grenade thrown at his feet, exploding and spraying his entire figure with a merry golden fire. His wife was still asleep, breathless, her face waxen pale. Her awakening was not like his. A terrible surprise awaited her. What she had said the night before, that Katisa would come home around dawn, she herself had not seriously believed. But when she rose at 9 o'clock, she saw that the table had not been cleared. Last night's cup was still there, with the dirty plate. She ran to the kitchen, Here she found the camp bed folded up in the corner, covered with its horsehair blanket. She wandered from room to room, unable to settle. Her throat tightened with bitterness. She looked at her salon. The piano had been pushed into a corner. Mirrors lay upon it, draped with cloths, as at funerals. Beneath it, hampers of clothes. In the dining room, the laundry chest. At one door, the rickety hall cupboard, placed there so they could barricade themselves against the proles. On their account, she had completely wrecked her home. Now, in the morning light, this junk shop of a flat conveyed all the horrors of a state of siege. Not a curtain anywhere, not a painting. On the bare walls, only the crucifix, which she had refused to take down despite her husband's protests. And beside the sideboard, the photograph of Piroska, their only child, a 6-year-old girl, lying among candles and flowers on the bier. Piroska had already been in her first year at school. One April morning she came home, complained of a headache. She put her to bed, and by nightfall she was laid out. Scarlet fever had destroyed her in 6 hours. Her husband was gone. Off again, out in the world, on his own business, on his own adventures. She knew he was unfaithful. After the little girl's death, Vizine had been sent to a sanatorium, lived there for years. It was then that her husband had grown cold toward her, and since then he had been unfaithful, courteously and discreetly, but constantly unfaithful. And that beast still hadn't come home either. She poured all her sorrow into this. She snatched up the feather duster and began flicking it about, hoping to forget her vexation in the fever of work. Meanwhile, she thought about how she would receive her. Katika had spent the night carousing at the Tristi Nu with her bargeman. She arrived around 10, disheveled, drowsy, her lips smeared with faded rouge. She gave off a faint smell of wine. Vizine, restraining herself, but trembling with agitation, informed her that she was giving notice. She could leave on the 15th. The girl, like an impudent person who is suddenly dealt a mighty slap across the face, did not talk back this time. She accepted her dismissal in silence, took the feather duster from the woman's hand, and continued the cleaning. She sought to repair the injury to her self-respect by at least working. Only now did the woman truly take fright at having dismissed a servant with nothing but complete uncertainty before her. The die was cast. She felt the void closing in around her. She hurried down to Fixor. Fixor was just then taking down the red banner from the facade of their building, busying himself with rolling the cheap paper fabric around the flagpole. Vizine took him by the arm and led him upstairs. The janitor, although he was with the lady of the house, knocked on the door, wiped his feet several times on the doormat before entering. He, who not long ago had still been lunching at the soup kitchen set up in the National Casino, walked about self-consciously in a place where he had formerly moved with such ease. He had much to answer for, and he knew it. He was one of those who in that period called themselves old Marxists. He boasted that he had been paying party dues for 20 years already and counted himself among the red aristocracy. He was prouder of this than the counts were of their family trees going back centuries. Naturally, he had also become the house warden here. He collected the rents, carried out the directives of the Soviet government, warned the bourgeois against conspiracy, thumped his chest, showed off his wobbly legs, which had been worn out tramping the stairs. It was rumored that he had requisitioned 2 pairs of yellow shoes for himself and first-class rations, while the landlord, as an intellectual worker, was entitled only to second-class rations. But his greatest sin was held to be the fact that on that memorable day, when Vizine was hauled off to the Parliament, he had deliberately disappeared from the building, turning up only late in the evening, and Vizy, who had wanted to seek his protection, had waited for him in vain in the janitor's kitchen. The Vizzies made no secret of the fact that at the first opportunity they would break his neck. Now he felt his neck and his head, that battered head of his, which was like one of those apples they practically give away by the basketful at the market after a storm, there being so many of them. Vizine graciously seated him and placed her hand upon his arm.
Look here, Fixer, you could help me now. You absolutely must bring that girl. I have already given my girl notice. I shall be grateful to you.
The janitor sprang up to seize the door handle that led to his escape. Vizine detained him.
So she has been in service in Pest for 3 years already? But how is it I have never seen her at your relatives'?
Because that's how she is, if you please. She never goes anywhere. You can neither see nor hear her. Very quiet.
But she is strong, I hope. Can she manage these 4 rooms?
Her? 8 rooms even. Country girl.
And is she reliable?
You will see for yourself. I don't talk much. I will only say this much to your Excellency. And Fixor fell silent.
What?
That you will be satisfied with her.
The janitor returned at noon. Good News smiled from beneath his mustache. He had spoken to the girl. She was willing to enter service, and she would come tomorrow to settle the terms. But the next day, she did not come. Events occurred that overturned everything. Budapest was occupied, not as Tatar, Gabor, and Vizi had prophesied. It was the Romanians who marched in, crossing the Tisa, defying the prohibition of the great powers, taking possession of the city on their own initiative. In brand new uniforms, they strutted among the hungry, ragged citizens of Pest, as though dressed up for this historical guest appearance. Their trumpets blared with ear-splitting din. They did not take a single step without these enormous instruments raised to the heavens, with which they clearly sought to invoke in the memory of the stunned, humiliated country the Emperor Trajan, the Roman cohorts, the world-conquering legions. Neither the Hungarians nor the Romanians could ever have imagined this, not even in their wildest fever dreams. They gazed at each other in amazement, marveling at what had come to pass. It was unbelievable. The Hungarians saw from their windows that Romanian automobiles were already darting through the streets, but they did not believe it. The Romanians themselves did not quite believe it either. Head waiters leapt forward obsequiously, lift boys guided them in the elevators. They went wherever they pleased. They were somewhat taken aback, like one who dreams he has suddenly stumbled into a fairy tale land and feels that no obstacle stands before his desire. At first they did not know what to wish for, and in their childish greed chose the worthless, showy trinkets over the truly valuable. First of all, they had the telephones removed from private dwellings. 2 army wagons heaped with telephone sets and torn wires rattled along the Christina Boulevard. Then they appeared without warning in clothing depots, factories, hospitals, where a broken, elderly Hungarian received them. The director, in an old-fashioned frock coat, and in primitive French, nearly in tears, stammered out his rehearsed courteous protest, invoking the Great Entente. But the officer merely gave a signal, whereupon the doors opened, and already they were carrying out the clothes, the machines, the patients' robes and sheets, as reparation, as war indemnity. On the other hand, they watched over the safety of the citizens, punishing every attempt directed against private property or public order. They went from house to house. They escorted handcuffed, pale-faced terrorists whose heads hung low. The dance had begun, the great dance of which Fixor had spoken. The house of Cornel Vizy, having absorbed the nervousness of these historical days, hummed like a beehive. Now Druma, the strapping lawyer, came rushing upstairs, waving his briefcase and announcing that the Social Democrat government had been chased away and a civic government had taken power. Now Drumane came shrieking in from the street with her small son on her arm, because some fight had broken out. Now Etel brought the news that yet another communist had been given a proper thrashing. Now, heart and lung patients, leaving Dr. Movister's surgery, were talking politics outside the Viz's door. Now, Steffi was speechifying. The Druma's counter-revolutionary maid, who after doing the dishes would go to public meetings and come home with a feverish face to recount what she had heard, leaning over the railing of the second-floor corridor and shouting that every socialist ought to be strung up. Vizine only occasionally stepped out into this deranged stairwell to look for Fixer.
Tell me, what religion is this girl?
Catholic, Your Excellency, Catholic.
This she approved. Catholic girls were sweeter, more modest, not as stubborn and demanding as the Reformed ones. True, Catholics were frivolous, forever singing, quick to go to ruin. Once they started rolling down the slope, there was no stopping them. From heaven, they plunged straight to hell. Once she caught the janitor at the Christina Square.
And where was she born?
In Kayar, my sister-in-law's daughter. I told you, from Lake Balaton.
This, too, had a pleasant effect on the woman. Once, when her little daughter was still alive, they had spent their summers at Balaton Ferd. She thought back happily to that summer, which had been all children's laughter, the sound of waves and gypsy music. And then she seemed to recall having heard someone praise the Balaton girls. At the weekly market, she accosted Fixornay.
What is her name? Remind me.
Goodness,
The stout woman exclaimed in surprise.
you don't even know yet? Anna.
Anna.
Vizine repeated, and found the soft, lovely woman's name agreeable, for she had never yet had a servant named Anna, nor a relative named Anna, which would certainly have been bothersome.
Anna.
She said once more, and the word soothed her. It fell upon her like something white, like manna. Fixor did everything in his power to lure his relative away. He set to work at once, and he and his wife took turns running to Iraq Street. He knew what was at stake. Each morning he saw the communists being thrown out of their posts head over heels. A young man passed before their gate. From his temple, blood trickled in a thin, living ribbon. He wiped at it with his handkerchief. At such times, the janitor redoubled his zeal. But this availed him little. For the time being, he could only speak with Chifkane, Bartos's sister-in-law, who lived with the surveyor's family. The surveyor was unwilling to let the girl go unless Fixer brought him a new one equally suitable in her place. It was no use badgering Anna either. She hemmed and hawed, did not quite understand what was afoot, and besides, she felt sorry for the children, Bandika and Pistik, whom she had grown very fond of. All the same, she promised she would drop by to see them. But she did not keep her word. Later, she said she had changed her mind. Vizine reproached him.
Why don't you bring her already? I should at least like to see her.
Today is washing day.
She takes in washing too.
Of course, she washes, she irons, and how?
Another time this excuse.
She has taken the children for a walk.
Bandika?
Asked the woman, who by now was somewhat acquainted with the family's circumstances.
That's the one, the 4-year-old.
Look here, don't string me along. Speak honestly. I absolutely must know whether I can count on her.
You can count on her, Your Excellency. I am speaking honestly.
Then the janitor vanished from her sight. He was doing overtime at the post office, appeared at home only for a few minutes, incognito, and kept himself hidden. Fixornay always said he was at the girl's place just then. The middle of the month was approaching with perilous speed. Vizine was already toying with the idea of keeping Katika, who, after her notice, since she knew she was not irrevocably chained to her, no longer seemed quite so objectionable. Katika had taken a position with a chemist. She was due to start on the 15th. It was plain that she would be left without a servant now, on the eve of winter, in this demented world. Her husband would grow gloomier still. Again, they would be unable to receive guests or go anywhere, as after Herring Luzika, during those miserable 2 months whose memory lay upon her breast like a nightmare. Anna, it seemed, would have to be given up. But she resolved not to let herself be defeated. Not for nothing had her late father been a colonel of hussars and both her grandfathers soldiers. Military energy dwelt in her tenacious body, and now her ancestors, even from the distance of centuries, gave her strength for this siege. She took to combing the city. She pounded the pavement all day long. She inquired at neglected acquaintances whether they might know of someone. Usually she received a pitying smile in reply. Then she embarked upon the cavalry, whose every station she already knew to the point of tedium. First she ran to the police. The police had other things on their mind. The Black Maria came and went, carrying its rich cargo of humanity. Outside, in the courtyard, on unpainted wooden benches, the suspects huddled, child and elderly communists, women in rags and in silk, with tear-swollen eyes, awaiting their fate. Vizine sent in her visiting card to the captain of the Domestic Service Bureau. He knew what she wished and received her out of turn. With a certain jaded sympathy, he regarded her as a nerve specialist regards an incurable patient. He consoled her a little, then directed her to the Domestic Service Agency. She set out on this errand without much hope either, more just to get her bearings. The tin signboards, in blue, red, and green checkered patterns, advertised cooks, chambermaids, wet nurses, servants of every order and rank, boasting of a long-vanished Canaan-like abundance, just like the empty restaurants which on gilded glass tablets called the public's attention to the fact that fresh dishes are available at every hour of day and night, or the tobacconists who vaunted their domestic and foreign tobacco products, but sold only cigarette holders and flints for lighters. In Buda there were no girls at all. She went from district to district until she found a few in Ferencváros. The agency man came bowing towards her. She had long known this one, as she knew every agency man. He was a pallid, cunning rogue of a figure, with a silver watch chain on his waistcoat. He flattered every lady, called every servant girl a young lady, in the interest of his business. In a whisper, he proffered his wares. The idle females were chattering on straw chairs along the wall, like wallflowers at some dreadful ball. When she entered, they fell silent. They tried to force an air of informality and indifference onto their faces, mindful that it takes two to strike a bargain, yet they could not take their eyes off this unknown woman who might nevertheless become their fate, and they admired and disparaged her in equal measure. She cast but a single glance at them. She established that this was already the rejected, unsightly material left over in the strip shop after the clearance sale, what nobody wanted any more. And who, indeed, would send her daughter into service now, when money had no value, when the peasant had so much lard he was drowning in it, and his children were learning the piano? Out of curiosity, she made a few attempts. One girl she addressed replied from a seated position, legs crossed. Another stood up, but immediately put on the mask of mockery over her humiliated face and asked for her book back herself, amid the indecent tittering of the others, who nudged one another and instinctively edged away from Vizine. Only one would have come willingly, a gray-haired 60-year-old matron of a cook with a poisoner's face, who, according to the agency man, had cooked in the best provincial restaurants and would have taken on the floor polishing too, but she was already feeble, weary, and had long since left her energy behind in the slop pails of the restaurants of Kecskemét and Cegléd. What was she to do with the likes of her? Despondently she stared at the table, upon which, to lift the spirits, fly-spotted paper roses bloomed in a bizarre coffee pot. The air of the room was made heavy by the female emanations of the servants. In the evening, her head began to ache. That fierce, one-sided headache set in which had not tormented her for some time. She wound a towel around her forehead, and in the dark room pondered why she had worked herself up so. It was not the failure that had disheartened her, for she had been prepared for that. Something like self-reproach gnawed at her. that she had been unfaithful to Anna, had wanted to betray her, to abandon her for others, and now she resolved that, come what may, she would secure her after all. Ministry and mystery, she fought this heroic battle alone. She had not even told her husband that she had given Katika notice. In secret, she also called on Druma, whose law office was already filling up with the relatives of ruined communists, for word had spread what a counter-revolutionary he was, and everyone wanted to entrust their defense to him. The young lawyer's naturally ruddy face was ablaze with the fever of history. He would gladly have had Fixor locked up. He placed at least 5 years' imprisonment in prospect, but he considered the servant question rather murky. At any rate, he typed a letter, sent it by registered post to Bartos, calling upon him to release the girl without delay, as the law required. Vizi only came home to wolf down his lunch and dinner. He ate grimly, fidgeted, did not say a word. She would not have dared to disturb him with such trifling matters. If she asked where he was going or where he had been, he merely muttered, "Ministry," as mysteriously as if he were saying, "Mystery." In truth, for her husband, this was the mysteriousness, the great vistas of public life and politics, and whatever lay outside it was such a trifle as to be unworthy of attention. The venerable yellow building of the ministry hummed with intimate bustle. Whenever he crossed its threshold, a sweet tingling tickled him, and already on the staircase his face assumed that unctuous, self-assured smile, which meant that here, to be sure, everything belonged to everybody, but in truth belonged only to him, and he was at home, far more so than in his own flat. Once again, the porter greeted him. His well-groomed secretary received him in the anteroom, having already sorted and sifted his visitors, who were admitted to his presence only after a further careful culling. These Vizi seated, and as a rule, begged their pardon that he could not be at their disposal straight away. He complained of the volume of work. His favorite expression was that he had not a moment even to die. He pressed the buttons of the bell panel on his desk like a concert pianist. He spoke officially with the provinces, called in his clerk, requested a file from him, read it with a shake of the head, debated with him, cordially but condescendingly, so as to make his power felt even by the strangers present. Then, turning to his visitors, he would ask whether they would care for a cigar. Upon receiving an affirmative reply, he fished his keys from his back pocket, unlocked a desk drawer, unhurriedly, so as to defer the moment of fulfillment. Then, folding back the gilded lid of the box, presented before them the beribboned cigars, which, belonging to the Fund of Representational Cigars, were destined to advance his career. While he offered a light, he mentally registered that he had one cigar fewer, and folding back the gilded lid, locked the box away again. He loved this ceremoniousness, and he loved the spirit of the office too. Towards noon, the bell tolled, proclaiming the arrival of the minister. The building virtually transformed into a church. Even the solemn government trees stood more festively in the courtyard in their handsome iron railings. "Have you seen His Excellency? Is he in good spirits today? I want to beg some money for that unfortunate Chamber of Commerce. Your servant, Your Excellency, your servant, Your Honor. I am your most humble servant." His friends gathered around him, emerging from their Viennese counter-revolutionary hideouts, from their country estates, all gentlemen in body and soul, all scrubbed and fragrant, exhaling the scent of eau de cologne and Persichan tobacco. They embraced him, clapped him on the back, feted him, for they had heard something about his being dragged off to the Parliament. They too complained of how much they had suffered, of what those criminals had stolen from them. But still they were alive and they were together, the young and the old on familiar terms with one another, the second salary grade with the eighth, like the children of one great family. Everyone here melted into a certain charming, fraternal feeling, ever ready to be of service, in and out of the office, according everyone his proper title and respect, with military discipline and a certain self-discipline too, in the knowledge that everything was on account and that in time anyone might attain the highest rung of the ladder. This was his world, more than his home, his everything.
Vizzy was an excellent civil servant, diligent, conscientious too. His superiors and subordinates alike acknowledged this. He was not even lacking in social feeling. When people in difficulty turned to him, he would immediately write out a referral to some agency. From time to time, he even contributed himself, according to his means, to the establishment of an orphanage or a sanatorium. He did not tolerate, however, being pestered individually for what then were official institutions for, nor could he be accused of having committed any abuses. Not a single filler of public funds had gone astray in his hands, but being a fool and a dupe when it came to doing favors, in the hope that his favors would be reciprocated, he procured orders and various permits for old acquaintances, tradesmen, and merchants who repaid this by not letting him pay when he shopped in their stores. This invariably astonished him, and he disapproved of it too, but it would have pained him had the expected surprise failed to materialize. On his name day, on the once famous Cornell days, various trades and commercial firms would present him with gifts large and small. They sent meat, cakes, liqueurs, so that the hospitable table was amply furnished. He would also receive the odd ring or silver watch, which, out of regard for his own Puritanism, he did not use, but merely locked in the glass cabinet and gazed at in his melancholy moments. These gifts fell far short of the favors he had rendered, but they pleased him, bolstered his self-esteem, and cast a certain faded poetry over his life. Now, too, he was tending these friendships, untangling these threads of interest at the civic casino, at committee meetings, at party dinners, night and day. In these turbulent times, he wanted to take a leap on that career ladder, where he had stalled for the past 10 years. One evening, he was invited to dinner at his undersecretary's. On such occasions, Vizzy metamorphosed into an affable man of the salon. He even chatted with his wife. Vizine seized this opportunity to let him in on her secret. Before they left, she lured him into the janitor's quarters. Vizzy conducted the negotiations quite differently. Not being acquainted with the 1,000 ramifications of the matter, he was able to assume a lofty manner, as though pressing an overdue file upon some negligent clerk at the ministry. His wife looked on proudly. It was a different thing, after all, when a man spoke. The whole of it amounted to no more than,
What about that servant girl?
She gave me her word, Your Excellency.
If she gave her word, then let her come and do her duty.
She would come, but up till now the master wouldn't let her go.
What do you mean? His servant gave notice, and he accepted it? Then he has no right. The law clearly defines the locatio conductio operarum. This he is absolutely obliged to respect.
Yes,
said Fixer reverentially at the sound of the Latin words.
In short, let him not trifle with us. If she does not come to take her place, I shall have her brought by the police. You may tell him so. By the police.
This was all Fixer and his wife needed. They stood as though struck by lightning, staring at each other. The shadow of prison passed across their dwelling. They stretched out their hands as if to protest that they had not neglected anything, but also as if to ward off the blow about to fall upon them. Vizzy concluded his speech. He was ashamed of having thrown his prestige so heavily into the scales of this chicken-feed dispute. He let his gaze wander around the basement flat. In the kitchen, the ground damp had risen 1.5 meters up the walls, adorning them with palm-sized black roses. A smell of mildew lurked about, stale, dank.
mingling with the stench of onions browning on the stove. The window was so low that one could see only the knees of the passers-by. Here he had waited when his wife was taken to the Parliament, watching for Fixor through long, long hours upon that low, kneading stool, which they had now dusted off and offered him to sit on, if only for a moment, so that he might not carry off their sleep. But he did not sit down. He found it filthy. He was afraid of soiling his frock coat. Besides, he seemed to recall that the kitchen furnishings had been somewhat more presentable then. And at the time he had almost craved that stillness, that biblical austerity. A divan had stood somewhere then, upon which he would have liked to lie down. Could this be it? This sagging, superannuated divan, from which the corn husks dangled in knots? A chipped earthenware mug disfigured one corner, along with a market bag made of that mauve velvet which had once covered the first-class compartment seats of the state railway, but which, after the Revolution, had turned up here and there. Proletarian mothers even sewed knickers from it for their growing children. He was astounded by this barrenness. He held his handkerchief to his nose. With a nervous glance, he urged his wife along. She was still negotiating, circling with womanly planlessness.
So do speak to her, dear Fixer, and tell her to make up her mind at last. Look here. Perhaps you should offer her something on top of the wages.
As if she cared about wages. She doesn't bother about money.
No?
Visinet's eyes flashed.
Then what does she bother about? Does she keep lovers, perhaps?
Her?
And Fixor, forgetting the due respect, elbowed his stout wife in the ribs and guffawed.
Did you hear that? Anna keeps lovers.
Fixorne lifted her lip, baring her yellow horse teeth, and giggled at the notion that Anna, of all people, kept lovers. Visinet grew curious.
Perhaps it is her stomach she is fond of.
That one eats like a bird.
But then, what does she like?
Work, Your Excellency.
Said Fixor.
Work.
She is the kind of girl
Said the janitor's wife,
whose hands should be covered in gold.
and she smiled, like someone who clearly sees a person before her. Visinet herself did not know which of these two statements had struck her more deeply. The janitor's pithy, entirely unrhetorical encouragement, or his wife's almost poetically simple characterization. Both were generalities. But sometimes it is in generalities that the greatest substance lies, for they do not bind our imagination, but let it range freely. Katica was still with her, but only half. She let her do as she pleased. She did not even have her tidy the flat. She observed with something almost like pleasure how the dust and filth accumulated day by day. Whenever Katica sprawled yawning and drowsy in the kitchen, she saw in her place, beside her and behind her, the other one, who would set everything to rights and move about nimbly, marvelously, like a fairy. She who loved only work. And she set aside certain heavier tasks expressly for her, like precious gifts for a beloved whom one wishes particularly to honor. She expected everything from her. When she closed her eyes, there appeared the one of whom she knew only that her hands should be covered in gold, the golden-handed servant, and those golden hands, as though cast from solid yellow gold, glinted in the darkness and led her on, further and further. But then something happened. The Romanians had moved into their immediate vicinity, into Christina. Those whom she had gazed at in the first weeks with dazed astonishment now walked past her building as though they had been born there. She had grown so accustomed to them that she no longer even looked at them. On Sundays, the slender dark officers, tightly laced, reeking of perfume, strolled along the Bastion promenade in the company of some music-hall star, went on excursions to Istenhegi, picnicked on the grass with their casual sweethearts, and photographed them with their Kodaks. At the Philadelphia Café, they had Hungarian songs played into their ears, songs they themselves had once sung with longing in their Transylvanian student days, when they were in love. The rank and file had set up a wagon camp on the Vermezu. In the evenings, they cooked supper in their cauldrons, campfires were lit, and the serving girls of Buda, who had not seen real soldiers for ages, only green-carded shirkers and consumptive Reds, gathered around them. Katika's Lajos had been nabbed by the police as a burglar with a criminal record. The girl took up with a Romanian, a barely 20-year-old shepherd from the snowy lowlands. The helmeted warrior had never in his life seen so beautiful a woman. With his arm around her waist, her hand in his, he strolled with her around the Vermezu, gazing at her painted red lips, her angel blonde hair. He swore by gestures that he would marry her. Only let her come with him to Romania. Every day he waited for her at the gate with a bouquet of flowers. He often came inside the stairwell, too. Everyone was outraged by this. Etel would no longer speak to Katika, that traitor to the nation, and Steffi spread the word that Katika was a Romanian spy. Vizine wrung her hands at the scandal, the disgrace upon her house, but she dared not intervene. She feared the reprisal of the occupying army. No answer had come to Druma's registered letter either. The situation had become intolerable. She took up her parasol and set out, all alone. It was a dusty gray dusk, one that in the middle of summer was reminiscent of autumn, when darkness falls early and the wind shrieks down the chimneys. She stumbled along the bumpy Taban hillside. The familiar Christina, with its circling patrols, seemed alien, a strange colony. She knew roughly where the house must be. In the course of their conversations, the janitor had explained several times that a midwife also lived there, one Erzsébet Carvalli, whose sign hung outside, a baby being bathed in a tub, and that one entered the house through a timber-beamed gateway. The Bartos family's glass door opened onto the courtyard. On the wall was a picture of St. Florian, and beneath it, a red votive lamp. In Arock Street, there was nothing but squat, tumble-down hovels sunk into the earth, each one like the next. Among these, she lost her way. Before a ramshackle shack sat some half-witted old woman, who with difficulty grasped what she was looking for and informed her that she had gone a little too far up. She must turn back. She hurried like someone doing something illicit. People eyed her with suspicion. She began to be afraid. Reaching a grassy knoll, she caught sight of Erzsébet Carvalli's sign with the bathing infant and crept into the gateway. The picture of St. Florian, the flickering red lamp on the wall, beckoned encouragingly towards her. Her plan was to have the girl called out, speak to her, lure her away, immediately if possible, but at the very least she wanted to see for herself what she was like. She rummaged in her small handbag, took out some money to send someone in with a message for her. But in Arock Street, not a soul was about. The narrow, grimy courtyard, beneath the leaden sky above, was deserted. From within, she heard voices, women's voices and children's voices. Tentatively, the wind slammed a window shut. She waited, pressed against the wall. That certain glass door suddenly flew open, and out into the courtyard ran a barefoot little boy, Bandika, and after him, a woman. Vizine's heart gave a beat. The woman was roughly as tall as she, but muscular, thick-set, her skin yellowish-brown, her large, disheveled hair and thick eyebrows coal-black. Some faded maroon dress hung loosely from her. She ran after the little boy, who was getting into mischief around the rim of the well, caught him by the hand, scolded him, then lifted him lovingly into her arms, kissed him several times, and carried him back inside. A few minutes later, she came out again with a tin basin. She drew water at the well, filled the basin, and as she turned to go back in, glanced sideways. Their gazes met at that moment. Vizine, raising her parasol slightly, beckoned to her. Then she beckoned with her left hand too. The woman did not notice, perhaps did not understand, and hurried back inside. She did not appear again. It was growing dark. Later, a man stepped through the gate. The surveyor, no doubt, who merely stared, wondering what a lady was doing here. She thought it best to make herself scarce. It had not gone quite as she had planned. Still, she did not regret the adventure, for now she had seen with her own eyes that the girl was strong, industrious, and decent. What pleased her most was how affectionate she had been with the child, and at least now her imaginings had a solid foundation. At home, she boasted to Fixor.
I have seen her.
How did you find her, Your Excellency?
Well, she's not bad looking.
She is a blessed creature. You will see for yourself.
But when?
Any day now. We have already found a girl to replace her. They told us today that they will let her go. Please don't worry.
Etel and Steffi, sitting in the two facing doorways of the second-floor corridor, stirring the sugared egg paste for the cake, conversed about this. Her name is Anna. Really? Drumane had spread the news. She sniffed out every piece of gossip. This insipid, phenomenally uncultured little woman had been an ordinary nurse during the war and had got herself married to that handsome husband of hers while he lay with a head wound in the military hospital at Maros Vasarheli. She crept about the stairwell furtively, like a little mouse. She spoke in a squeak. Once she came up behind Vizine and ambushed her in that tactlessly familiar manner of hers.
We have heard, we have heard. What are you paying her?
Movisterne had also learned of it from her. The beautiful doctor's wife, in her rose-colored hat, was on her way to a dress rehearsal for which she had received a complimentary ticket from some actor acquaintance. Yet another new literary stripling was escorting her. She spotted Vizine at Kijo Square, stopped her, and steered the conversation in that direction.
You don't say, darling. So she still hasn't started. They were saying she had already entered service yesterday.
Vizine shook her head, and as the days passed, Anna's beneficent figure trembled before her only as a mirage, ever more distant. She often believed by now that the whole thing was a fantasy, and that the girl she had seen did not in fact exist. Anna. It was the 14th of August, a glorious summer day, hot and radiant. Vizzy had already dashed over to the Civic Casino for his after-lunch coffee. His wife sat alone, musing over the ruins of the rice soufflé. As she pushed her plate aside, she noticed with surprise that beneath the plate several grains of rice had been hiding. With the tip of her fork, she counted them. There were 7 grains. She counted them several times. There were always 7. How had they got there? She could not understand. She distinctly remembered that she had not scattered them, for she had not moved her plate throughout the entire meal. The number set her thinking. Why precisely 7? Everything means something. Even the smallest signs are sent to us. From the other side, small signs conveying great things. She, who at seances had often seen the spirit of her little daughter and heard her voice, oh, how many times, quite distinctly, could not doubt this. She placed the 3 pills on her tongue, drank a glass of very watery wine, and was pondering what good news the 7 grains of rice might herald, when there came a soft tap at the door, and before she could answer, "Come in," Fixer's head peeked through the opening.
May I? We are here, Your Excellency.
Who is it?
Anna, may we come in?
1 moment. Wait.
The head withdrew. The door closed. Vizine gripped the corner of the table. The accidental, rapid surge of events nearly made her dizzy. On this day, she was barefoot, in slippers, wearing that old lilac housecoat in which she had been wont to go out into the street during the Commune, so that she might be taken for a proletarian woman. Before her wardrobe, she threw on her white housecoat, her champagne-colored stockings, her brown, low-heeled shoes. She snatched these from her wardrobe quickly, like an actress who is shortly to make her entrance. She even looked at herself in the mirror. Her face was weary, worn. She smiled at her reflection, found her smile forced, grew slightly more serious, and found the middle ground between the two expressions. She lightly touched her skin with the rice powder puff. At the last moment, she fastened her gold bracelet. On tiptoe, she glided back to the dining room. On the divan lay her husband's house jacket, with its sleeves turned inside out. She folded it up. Besides this, one or two other things bothered her. That the tablecloth covered only 3/4 of the table, that the greasy plates still stood in the middle beside the rice soufflé, and that flies were feasting on the sugar bowl. She would have liked to create a little order, but there was no time left for that. She feared that if she delayed too long, Katika would talk the girl out of it.
She merely tugged the corner of the tablecloth down a little further, merely stoppered the wine bottle with the aluminium-coated cork, and sat down again in her former place, facing the door, propped on one elbow, as though she had been sitting here for a long time already, thinking about whatever it is that ladies of good society generally think about after lunch. In a muffled voice, she said,
Come in.
Fixor entered. After him, for 2 seconds, 3 seconds, 4 seconds, no one.
Well?
She said, already believing she had been cheated again.
She is here.
The janitor reassured her.
She is here.
And then the girl, too, entered. She went straight up to her, crouched down, and kissed her hand, so naturally and practicedly, as though she had known her for years. Vizine did not immediately withdraw her hand. In general, she liked having her hand kissed. She enjoyed the feel of moist, human lips on her skin. Fixor gave some instruction to the girl, but what it was, Vizine no longer heard. She did not hear it, could not have heard it, for the blood rushed to her head in a powerful surge, roaring around both her ears, and with her whole being she watched the girl, who had meanwhile gone back, to stand by the door, holding in her hand her service book wrapped in a clean handkerchief, bareheaded, her eyes cast to the ground. Vizine fixed her lorgnette upon her. Disappointment, bewilderment, astonishment were reflected in her face.
Is this the one?
She said, pointing.
This is the one, Your Excellency.
Fixor confirmed, not understanding the question.
Anna, perhaps she is not suitable. And tilting his head to one side, he squinted towards Her Excellency.
She is?
Vizine answered, still hesitantly, still marveling.
So this is the one?
No, it was not she, after all. At least, in Arok Street that evening, she had seen someone else. The woman who had run after the little boy had been taller, much more muscular. Her face yellowish-brown and her hair black. Her eyebrows, too, were black, coal-black. Of this, she was quite certain. A simple misunderstanding must have been involved. She had doubtless confused her with someone else, perhaps with Bartos's sister-in-law, of whom she had heard from Fixor once or twice. But although she cleared this up in her mind immediately, it took several minutes before she could strip the woman in the maroon dress, whom in her thoughts she had already hired, billeted, laid down in Katisa's bed, who in her imagination had already cleaned every one of her rooms, whom she had already claimed as her own, of all the virtues with which she had adorned her. Now she had to tear off her decorations, hand them over to the rightful recipient, this still entirely unfamiliar, awkward young woman who stood before her in visible stage fright. The disappointment and astonishment had already vanished from Vizine's face. All of it had softened into a kind of pleasant twilight. She was still appraising her. This one did not even look like a peasant girl. She was not the big-boned, rosy-cheeked type like Varga Urzi. Rather, she was slender and fragile, her face oval, her bones fine, well-proportioned. She wore a fresh gingham frock, beneath which her girlish breasts slumbered softly, unconsciously, playfully, like two little rubber balls. And in her whole being there was something she could not put into words, something that attracted her, that made her recoil a little too, but that interested her enormously. She put down her lorgnette, and when she was no longer scrutinizing her, but merely letting what she had observed take effect, she suddenly felt that this was the one she had been seeking in vain for years. She heard an inner prompting, as at the decisive turning points of her life, that supporting, encouraging voice which had spoken within her so many times, something like a command not to deliberate too long, but to hire her, to keep her, and a longing seized her to have her stay at once, to possess her, and already she stretched out her arm towards her, as though to seize her, never to let her go again.
The book, if you please?
Asked Fixor.
Yes,
Said Vizine, who, mastering herself, had deftly transposed her misunderstood gesture to a lower register.
let us see her book.
She raised her eyebrows.
Edes?
She said.
Edes?
That is her name, Anna Edes.
Vizine read the service book in an undertone. Anna Edes, born in the parish of Balatonfukayar, district of Enying, county, district etc. Veszprém, country, Hungary, personal description, year of birth, 1900. Religion, RC, build, medium, face, round, eyes, blue, eyebrows, blonde, nose, regular, mouth, regular, hair, blonde, teeth, intact, beard, none. Has been vaccinated, yes. Distinguishing marks, none. Signature in own hand, Anna Edes.
Yes, she said, smiling enigmatically, perhaps at the fact that her name was Edes and that she had no beard.
Now, glancing between the booklet and the girl, she checked the official findings of the service book, which in truth came nowhere near capturing the indescribable reality. Her hair, not thick hair, which she had simply smoothed back dry and without pomade from her convex forehead, was not blonde, but rather a shade between chestnut and blonde, tawny hair. Nor was her nose regular, but decidedly interesting, with its breathing nostrils almost distinctive and piquant. Her build was somewhat above medium, but frail, underdeveloped, perhaps still faintly boyish. Her mouth was anemic and chapped, and her hands were the usual servant's hands, coarse. Her nails were short and warped.
How old is she?
19, Fixor.
Always answered.
Isn't that right, Anna? Why doesn't she speak, my girl?
Vizine turned to her.
She's shy, very shy.
Vizine had not yet seen her eyes, so she said,
And why won't she look me in the eye?
She's frightened.
Of whom? Of me? She really needn't be frightened of me.
The girl raised her brush-like lashes, but before the woman could see them, she lowered them again. Vizine studied her signature, the spidery, spindly letters, which she must have drawn out long and painstakingly, hunched over a desk in some police office, and the references from her former employers. She had served in only 2 places so far. In 1916, when she came up to Budapest with Wild the warehouse clerk, and then with Bartos the inspector, in both places for nearly a year and a half.
What was she?
A nursemaid?
Fixor replied.
So, a nursery girl?
Vizine corrected him.
The references were satisfactory.
Her employers acknowledged that she was loyal, her moral conduct irreproachable, and that she departed in good health. Frau Wild, however, had conscientiously written for the information of other citizens that she was not always dependable in her work, and this too, not yet sufficiently skilled.
Not yet sufficiently skilled.
Vizine read.
Of course, of course.
She'll get the hang of it.
That's not even so important, really. The main thing is that she apply herself.
Industrious she certainly is.
Can she cook?
A little.
Fixor modestly offered on her behalf.
A little. I'd prefer if you said nothing at all. I know how it goes. They all talk like this when they hire on. Then when they take a spoon in hand, it turns out they haven't the faintest idea. Do you remember Fixor, Heavenly Marget? She also said she could cook, and Liddy too.
Fixer remembered them both and nodded gravely.
Well, I'll break her in. But does she clean, wash, wax floors?
Of course,
the caretaker replied.
So then, and this very quickly now, she will do everything that arises around the house. Shop at the market, carry coal from the cellar, in her spare time darn stockings, mend clothes, etc., etc.
She's not picky, this one, isn't that right, Anna?
That's proper. In my house one must work. I have no need for little misses. My apartment must shine.
Anna could not see the speaker, for she kept staring at the floor, hearing only the voice, bodiless, like some kind of proclamation. Confused, she shifted from one foot to the other. When she had stepped in here, her stomach had lurched at once. Such nausea had seized her that she thought she would collapse on the spot. She sensed some unspeakable stench, as in a pharmacy, a sharp, cold smell that increasingly wrung her nose and churned her insides. Vizine kept camphor in the piano to prevent the moths from gnawing at the padded hammers. Anna did not know the source of this medicinal smell. She knew only that she could not bear it, knew only that from the very first moment she had wanted to run out, and had she listened to her healthy instinct, she would have fled without greeting or farewell, down the stairs, through the streets, running, not stopping until she reached home, the stubble fields of Kajar. Her uncle, however, was beside her, and she dared not stir. Yet she raised her gaze enough to see Vizine's shoes, her stockings, the pendulum clock on the wall ticking in its ebony case, sifting its even ticking into the torpid, genteel silence of the dining room. Occasionally, she even peeked into the salon. Here, a colorful swirl of images spun in the mirror. A long, low daybed stretched out, covered with a red Tarantal rug, upon which the afternoon had lit a blazing pyre. She had seen nothing like this at the Wilds or the Bartoses. Dazzled, dizzy, she gazed at it all whenever she raised her eyes. It seemed she had entered an enchanted castle.
The question is,
Vizine spoke up,
whether she has any inclination for the position. What's that? She probed, when the girl again did not answer.
Anna then shrugged, barely perceptibly, lightly and sadly. Before Vizine, the world darkened. This quiet, rebellious servant's gesture, which she knew so well, dashed her hopes in an instant. Everything she had built with such laborious effort. She resolved to be stern now, to force the issue.
I beg your pardon?
She asked mockingly.
That is not how one answers in my house. If you have no inclination for the position, my girl, then here is your book.
And she dropped the service booklet onto the table so that it slapped.
You may go, with God's blessing.
Anna didn't mean it that way.
Fixor apologized.
Isn't that right, Anna? You didn't mean it that way?
Well, how did she mean it?
There was silence. Vizine and Fixor waited for the answer.
I do.
Anna whispered soundlessly, meaning that it was all the same to her, since everywhere one only had to work.
That's different. Speak sensibly and properly, as is customary in a gentleman's house. If you conduct yourself well, you'll have a good life here.
You'll have a good life here, Fixer
Hastened to the gracious lady's aid, that together they might bring her to a decision.
There are only the two of us, myself and my husband, no children.
And she glanced involuntarily at the photograph on the wall, and with her habitual distracted gesture, smoothed her amber yellow hair, as if her chignon were heavy, as if her skull were splitting beneath it.
Besides, it's not as it is elsewhere in my house. Bread is free. She may eat as much as she likes. I've heard that in her last place she had only broth for breakfast. Here she'll get coffee every morning, hot coffee, pastry on Sundays, meat twice a week. And if she behaves herself, now and again, I'll give her a pair of shoes, or a dress.
A dress, Anna, a dress.
The caretaker urged, smiling.
And later we'll see. Possibly,
This was always her last trump card.
I'll even have her trained as a seamstress.
Did you hear, Anna? Did you hear? Sewing? The gracious lady will have you trained in sewing. Just be industrious. You're going to fine people, for this is no ordinary house. There's none like it.
He wanted to say something grand.
In all of Christina.
When does she start?
Right now,
Said Fixer. Vizine had not expected this. She had counted on tomorrow at the earliest.
I settled it with them.
The caretaker boasted.
Because when I make a promise, Your Excellency. Where is her bundle?
Down at my place.
Bring it up, she instructed Fixor.
She waited until the caretaker was out the door. Then she stepped close to the servant, so close that her face brushed against hers. Anna opened her large, languid eyes in alarm. Her eyes were blue, but not sparkling. Rather milky blue, violet blue, like the waters of Lake Balaton on a hazy summer dawn. Now she saw Vizine for the first time. A pale, very tall, ice-cold woman loomed before her, who, she did not know why, resembled some unknown bird with ruffled, lustrous plumage. She backed toward the door, Vizine wishing to smooth over the small clash, and above all, to hear her voice at last. For the girl had uttered only a single word so far, the word, I do, asked with human emphasis.
What is your father?
A servant.
A servant where?
At the estate. A farmhand.
A peasant. And does he have anything? A house, land, a pig?
Nothing.
But he does get wheat. Ah, your sort live better today than we do. And your mother?
A nanny.
And here her voice broke.
What is it?
She died. I have a stepmother.
She said, her throat tightening.
Siblings?
One brother.
Is he a peasant too?
He just came home.
From the war?
No, from French captivity.
And she shrugged her shoulders.
Again, that is unbecoming. We answer with yes and no. Well, she'll learn.
There was still time for that. She did not drill her further, but turned to the essential matter. Confidentially, in a somewhat lower voice, she asked, as one woman to another,
Does she have a sweetheart?
Anna indicated that she did not. She did not blush, but her forehead, that lovely convex forehead, was suddenly flooded by a pinkish haze.
Honestly, don't deny it, because I'll find out anyway. This is a moral household. No one may come in here by day or by night. Besides, the keys are with me. She doesn't even have acquaintances?
No.
She must know somebody.
The Fixors.
A pause.
And Frau Wild.
A pause.
And Frau Chifka, Herr Bartosch's sister-in-law.
His sister-in-law? That stout, tall woman who lives with them?
Yes.
No one else?
No one.
Better that way. They only ruin you. I'm not saying if someone comes to visit, her father or her brother. Then she asks permission to see them. Otherwise, every other Sunday is free. From 3 in the afternoon until 7, but by 7 she must be home.
Fixor brought up a meager little bundle, tied in a checked kerchief. Vizine, exercising her right as mistress, untied it. It was always during bundle inspections that she first satisfied herself as to whether the new servant would steal. She found few belongings, several ragged cotton handkerchiefs with no monogram, therefore she had probably not stolen them. A much-worn blue calico dress, a few headscarves, a pair of men's shoes cast off by some employer, which she must have received as a gift somewhere, a round promotional hand mirror with the company's insignia, an iron comb still full of her tangled hair, and then a dented yellow tin child's trumpet, from which a red tassel hung. She took it in her hand, turned it over. She could not imagine what use the servant could have for a trumpet. Katika opened the door, her head held high, with the haughty smile of an offended princess, to clear the midday table. Vizine no longer allowed her to touch it. She sent her out and followed her. Fixor used her absence to press his niece into a frank confession.
Well?
Anna was silent.
It's a good position, said the caretaker.
A first-rate position.
They're wealthy. The house is theirs. This whole house. The master is a councillor. They're excellencies.
They spoke no more. They were bound together by the cheerless kinship of the poor, for whom blood ties mean precious little, because they have no fond, shared memories. They merely live side by side, working constantly, locked within themselves, impenetrable to one another at great distance. Vizine wanted to spirit Katisha out of there, as one spirits a cholera corpse from the public hospital, so it does not infect those still healthy. She thrust her wages at her and told her to pack her bundle at once. While she packed, she watched her like a hawk to make sure she was not taking anything. Katika's bundle was no thicker than Anna's, but her self-respect was. Before she left, with a cavalier gesture, she returned the knitted bed jacket she had received as a gift. She too felt that everything reminding her of this house, where she had been so deeply offended, was contaminated. The woman accepted the bed jacket, then slammed the door behind her. When she returned, she spoke to Anna in an entirely different tone, the tone in which she would henceforth nearly always speak to her.
Come, Anna, I'll show you the apartment. She led her from room to room. This is the study. You dust the books daily, but you don't move anything on the desk. The master is particular about his things. Understood? Be extremely careful about this, too.
A stuffed owl stared at the girl with yellow glass eyes. Anna followed Vizine and Fixor a few steps behind, swinging her bundle.
You've already seen the dining room. This is the laundry hamper. That wardrobe will, of course, be moved out of here.
In the salon, she said,
Well, this could use a good cleaning, too. We'll rearrange it. Pull the piano a bit further forward. There'll be work to do. That much is certain.
Anna stood beside the daybed with its red rug, so steeped in the camphor smell radiating from the piano that she turned white as a corpse. Vizine and Fixor were already in the bedroom. She heard only the woman urging,
Why isn't she coming? A strange girl, she said to Fixor. It'll certainly be hard going with her at first.
From the bedroom, a yellow wallpaper door, patterned with small trailing roses, opened into the dark, dank bathroom, where the broken taps dripped mournfully.
Turn off the light,
She commanded Anna.
Jump to it, girl, quick now. Whenever you leave a room, always turn it off. One mustn't waste in these expensive times. And close the door behind you, too. No effort at all. There's a draft.
They reached the kitchen. It was already so empty, so forsaken, as if the notorious Katika had never lived in it.
This is your... Vizine
Began, but could not find the word.
It's not large, but then they all managed in it. Not there.
She cried, when Anna placed her bundle on the table.
On the floor. Don't bring bed bugs into my apartment. Is your hair clean? Tomorrow you'll take a bath.
She showed her the pantry.
This is locked. Every morning I measure out the flour, lard, sugar. Nothing must go missing, she warned.
Fixor took his leave. Only at the door did it occur to Vizine.
Oh yes, her wages?
Oh, Your Excellency.
The caretaker protested, almost indignantly.
You'll give her what she deserves. First you'll see.
Very well. I shall see.
First she called her into the dining room. Under her supervision, she had her clear the midday table. She taught her, instructed her how to carry out the plates, how to wash up, how to put away the knives, forks, into the cupboard. In the evening, she set the table for supper. Again the plates, knives, and forks that had been cleared in the afternoon were placed on the table. A white roll was set out, for they were already eating white bread again. After they had made the bed together in the bedroom, Vizine handed her an unsliced loaf of maize bread.
This is your bread. And here is your supper, too.
A piece of cheese.
And this is the pillowcase.
She pressed a red striped pillow slip into her hand.
Put it on your pillow. Have your supper. Then you may go to bed.
She dismissed her.
I kiss your hand.
Never mind, said Vizine.
But the girl kissed her hand again. Does a new broom sweep clean? Anna looked around the unfamiliar kitchen. Have supper, then go to bed. She cut the piece of bread, but she could not even bite into it. The bread, and the cheese too, smelled the same as the apartment inside. She fumbled to unfold the camp bed, whose mechanism she did not yet know, pulled her pillowcase over her only pillow, wrapped herself in the uncovered duvet in which Katika had slept just yesterday, and after blowing out the candle, lay down.
Dear God, good God, my eyes are closing now, but yours are open, Father.
Little Bandika had prayed this too, and little Pistik, and Wild, the warehouse clerk's son Guri. She had taught it to every one of them.
While I sleep, watch over me, watch over my dear parents, watch over all my benefactors.
For Bandika, who slept on a divan beside her bed, she had to tell the story of the bird knife, too, afterward. This knife was such a knife that the moment you opened its blade, birds flew out of it at once, many, many small, colorful birds. The child would fall asleep to this, and upon waking in the morning would exclaim with laughter that he had dreamed of the bird knife. Anna recited the children's prayer. These rhyming words, which even now she did not fully understand, induced a gentle stupor in her. But she did not grow drowsy, and the night before she had stayed up late at the Bartoses. What time could it be already? Here she lay turned the other way, against the wall, facing the window, high up. She had never slept on an upper floor before. She saw the vast firewall of a tenement, glowing rectangles kindled and darkened. The occupants across the way, entering the ancillary rooms of that building, pantries, latrines, switched the lights on and off. Somewhere, someone was playing the piano. A woman sang beautifully to the accompaniment. She kept starting over, again and again. The windows rang, the walls rang, the whole house floated, rolled upon the waves of music. Often, it seemed that something was humming beneath her, directly under her bed. Later, she realized the piano was being played above, over her head. Then the singing and piano fell silent. Silence surrounded her, blackness. The bright rectangles on the firewall no longer glowed. When she grew slightly numb, she lost her sense of orientation. She groped for the old divan, but found only the wall around her, scratching at the empty night. She thought the kitchen had turned upside down, and she was about to plunge into some abyss. High up at the top of the firewall, a small flame still burned. It did not flicker out. It kept vigil with her. At first she thought it was a star. It was only a lamp, an ordinary oil lamp, yet it was brighter than a star. Every lamp is brighter than a star. After midnight, a key grated in the front door lock. Vizi had come home. He had already obtained a nighttime pass from the Romanians. He whispered with his wife. Shortly afterward, someone opened the kitchen door. Barefoot, in a long white nightgown, like a ghost, her mistress stepped to her bed and watched to see whether she was asleep. A quarter of an hour later, the figure appeared again. By then, Anna no longer saw her, for she was sleeping with her face buried in her pillow. For Vizine, this was no small matter. Once again, a stranger's breath filtered through the air of the apartment that they too breathed. A stranger's heart beat here. A stranger lived with them under the same roof. The nearest and the most remote had arrived, friend and enemy in a single person. The mysterious guest, every household's mysterious guest. Katika, however disagreeable she had been, was at least familiar. This one she did not know at all. What she had never done before, she locked the doors opening onto the salon and the bathroom.
Are you afraid?
Asked Vizi.
No, but still, the first night.
Barely had it dawned when, spurred by curiosity, she rose. She saw something that left her dumbstruck. The servant had already aired out the rooms and wiped them down. She could not understand how this was possible. She must have risen at 4 a.m. at the latest. She had worked so silently that nothing had been heard. Now she crouched in the study, behind the writing desk, in that blue calico dress, in those men's shoes already familiar from her bundle. Vizine merely nodded. She knew that one must not praise servants straight away, lest they grow spoiled. She had her grind coffee beans, heat milk, sent her running down to the baker's, had the breakfast table set, then sent her to the bathroom to inform the master. He was shaving before the mirror, lathered in soap, white as a snowman. Anna crept up to him noiselessly and reached for his hand.
Careful!
The stern gentleman shouted.
I'll cut myself.
And he held the gleaming blade aloft.
You're the new girl. What's your name? Your surname? Your father's name?
Hungarian, he established, for he always favored the grand political perspectives. Breakfast was pleasant. Not knowing the customs of the house, the new girl had laid a clean yellow tablecloth, one reserved for holidays. The spoons clinked with an old, idyllic silver sound. When Anna carried out the milk saucepan, Vizine followed her attentively with her gaze, then said,
She seems a decent girl.
Vizzy furrowed his brows. He disapproved of this recklessly advanced trust, which would only breed all the bitterer disillusion. It always began this way. His wife, who fancied herself a fine judge of character and drew far-reaching conclusions from the smallest details, in the first 24 hours pronounced every servant
a decent girl,
declared that
this one isn't like the rest,
lavished epithets upon them that could only be born in a poet's imagination. Then the disappointments inevitably followed. The next day she usually said nothing about the
decent girl.
On the third day she remarked through clenched teeth that she was
rather slow or lazy.
On the fourth day she found fault with her manners. Then the denouement came with dramatic swiftness. By the end of the week she would summon him with a momentous gesture, round her mouth into a small
"oh,"
and whisper almost soundlessly that
she steals.
Just imagine.
She steals.
And finally she would pronounce the ultimate verdict.
This one is the same trollop as all the rest.
Why delude ourselves? Let us sleep on it. A new broom sweeps clean.
The new broom, however, swept clean. She simply took up her straw basket and in her unlaced men's shoes, plodded off to the market. There was no need to wait for her. She did not dawdle. She was back in no time. The table set itself unsettingly, laid itself unlayingly, like the fairy tale magic tablecloth. There was order and quiet. She knew Viatores, the shops, the municipal stalls. She did not lose her way in the city either. When she was sent farther afield, she found her way back from Vamhaz Boulevard and even from Borado Square. She was not the country goose they had initially taken her for. Those 3 years she had spent in Pest had worn away the uncouth habits. She walked quietly, blew her nose quietly, did not speak like a peasant. Only instead of glass, she said the trans-Danubian gless, and occasionally, a forgivable error, addressed the gracious lady as Madam instead of Your Excellency. But one thing was strange. She did not eat. The maize bread and cheese she had left untouched the first day were served to her again for supper the next. She did not touch them then either. She stirred and swirled her morning coffee and pushed it aside. Not a morsel, not even that much, passed her throat. On the third day, she ate a single apple at the fixor's. That had no such smell. Whatever she tried, she could not accustom herself to this place. Her sense of smell, keen as a dog's, rebelled against it. When she caught sight of the house, at 238 Attila Utka from afar, she shuddered. And yet, Cornel Vizzi's house was a very handsome building, trim as a little chateau. Its facade was adorned with gray plaster rosettes, balconies hung from it, lightly affixed like swallows' nests. Upstairs, too, the Movisters and the Drumas were open, but the Vizzi's was glazed, veranda-like. One could even dine there, and a shaded lamp hung from the ceiling. Only these 3 genteel families lived here. Outside, on the wall of the building, 2 plaques, Dr. Szilard Druma, barrister at law. Dr. Miklos Movister, physician Medes Unives, consultations 11 a.m. and 12 noon, 7 p.m. They sent her up to the Movisters for eggs. This was when she learned where the beautiful piano music came from. The pretty doctor's wife sat before the piano in a low-cut housecoat, running her ring-laden, lily-white fingers over the keys, and sang very forcefully. Soon she became acquainted with the servants, too. Ethel presided in the large, bright kitchen, on a wide wicker chair, with key rings at the waist of her apron, like the family's patroness. She managed everything here. She decided what was cooked, what was for dinner. She tyrannized, occasionally even scolded her employers, and they feared her like the plague. From 3 to 4:30 in the afternoon she slept. During this time, the Movisters tiptoed about so as not to wake her. The doctor himself opened the door for his patients. With her lunch and supper, she drank a bottle of brown ale. She moved heavily, had latterly grown stout, ate strudel incessantly. She offered some to Anna, too. The Druma's servant did not at first deign to condescend to her. Steffi had come to the lawyer's household from a count's family, from the castle district. Having tired of the grand life there, she had yearned for a little repose, a little independent sphere of authority which she found here. She spoke of the Drumas with benevolent condescension, for they were young, and still so poor they had not been able to furnish their home properly. It was she who had taught them a few genteel customs. She ceremoniously announced their guests, served the butter on their table in scalloped little balls. She too wore a white apron with a black skirt. She referred to herself as the staff. She read Christian newspapers, befriended clerks' daughters, especially Druma's typist, with whom she sometimes strolled arm in arm, ostentatiously, so that she too might be taken for a typist. These 2 girls took her into their confidence. From time to time they asked what had been cooked, came down to her to telephone when there was no current in their own place. In the afternoons they invited her to play cards, walnuts and beans for steaks, to play Marius. She heard little good about Vizine. They called her a miser, a half-mad woman who conversed with the souls of the dead. They interrogated her as to whether she was satisfied with her position. She replied that she was satisfied. What could she have told them? She herself could not account for what it was she dreaded here, more and more with every passing day. She simply could not grow accustomed. The electric light she grew accustomed to quickly. They showed her how to operate it. Anna operated it just as they did, not knowing what electricity was, just as they did not. Only she glanced back after turning the switch, because though she saw the room brighten, she wanted to make sure the lamp was truly lit. It was similar with the telephone. For a few days she spoke into the mouthpiece in a sepulchral voice and confused it with the earpiece, but later she made friends with the telephone too. Out on the pusta she had seen greater wonders. She accepted that such things existed. Other things disturbed her, things that the longer she stayed, the more alien they became. Entirely insignificant things. When, for example, one morning she happened to hear that the master's name was Cornell, she felt she could not bear this place for long. The furniture itself filled her with a nameless dread. What she had imagined to be green, the stove, was white. The salon wall, however, was green and not white. The table was not round, but hexagonal and low. One door opened inward, the other outward. These small, endlessly recurring surprises unsettled her entire being. She was positively terrified of a maquart vase from which peacock feathers protruded. She believed that the peacock eyes were watching her, and when she passed it, she looked away. And then, the moment she opened her eyes, the mistress came out, disheveled, her hair standing on end as though bristling with rage and seemingly angry at her. She heard everything, for the parquet creaked far and wide. Vésinet anxiously had the apartment sealed against drafts, which caused toothache and earache, and against the light, which irritated her nerves. She was forever shadowing her, patrolling her heels. With fretful solicitude, she lectured her. "Like this, my girl. Like that, my girl. Put it on the table, but for God's sake, not on the edge. It'll fall off at once." After that, she placed everything in the center of the table, whereupon her mistress would adjust the object slightly, this way or that, so that she herself could be in the right. Nothing was ever good enough for her. If Anna was silent, she demanded to know why she was silent. If Anna spoke, mentioning that at the Bartoses this or that was done such and such a way, she was told off, that here things would be done differently. She was not to follow her own head. She was to listen to those who knew better. What she perhaps missed most of all were the children, who had been her living playthings, her dear little companions. After all, she had earned her bread until now by playing with them. She would have liked to nurse someone here too, to tell fairy tales, nursery rhymes. But what could she do with these solemn adults who went about her with their own separate, enclosed lives? Not a week had passed since she entered service when a great row erupted. She was cleaning the bedroom, listening to Frau Movister's piano playing above her head. On top of the wardrobe stood a little doll's room, fretwork furniture lacquered white, a gilt-scrolled mirror, a tiny washstand with a wee jug on its glass shelf, a small bed whose red silk coverlet sheltered a sleeping doll. Standing on a chair, she was dusting the gilt-scrolled little mirror. Suddenly she dropped it. It shattered indeed, to smithereens. Vésinet was there in a flash.
"What have you broken? Oh!" she shrieked. "You wretch!"
Anna jumped down from the chair, picking up the shards, trying to piece them together. The woman knocked them from her hand.
"Leave it. It's done,"
she cried, and burst into tears.
"I'll pay for it," said Anna quietly.
"She'll pay for it, as if one could pay for such a thing. It was a keepsake, my little girl's. Fetch a broom, quickly."
While Anna swept, she berated her from behind.
"Wretched girl. You see, Katisha never broke a thing. But I'll deduct it from your wages. I will, so you'll learn."
Vésinet shuddered that day at what a broken mirror signified. But then, what did the 7 grains of rice mean? She could not reconcile the two. She also recalled Frau Wild, who had written that she was not always dependable in her work and not yet sufficiently skilled.
"She breaks things,"
she thought.
"This one, it seems, breaks things."
Toward evening, Anna ran down to the fixor's and announced that she would not stay any longer. She would give notice on the 1st. The caretakers gathered around her, asking why. She only shrugged her shoulders with a shudder. She could not grow accustomed. Fixor, who was puffing on a pipe on the divan, removed the stem from his teeth and barked at her. He threatened her with her stepmother, saying he would send her home. The stepmother was very fond of her, could hardly wait. He chased her back upstairs at once. Anna thought no more about anything. Only at night did her heart twist when she caught sight of the solitary little flame on the firewall. She felt that she truly could never grow accustomed to this place, the marvel. And yet, she did grow accustomed. The great wash came. The dirty laundry rose before her in gray-white mounds, sheets, shirts, long johns, to which the grime and mortal sweat of the revolution still clung. The steam pleasantly dulled her senses. She heated water in the cauldron, sleeves rolled up to the elbow. She pounded at the washboard beside the trough. In dreamy-fingered fiddling, in sensuous reverie, she sloshed in the lukewarm lather of the soap. She lugged the laundry in baskets, hung it out, put it through the mangle. Her tablecloths came out like fine cambric, her collars gleaming like glass. The great cleaning lasted 3 days. First they emptied the drawers. Objects, as if they had been playing hide-and-seek, suddenly emerged from unhoped-for places. From a casket that was shaken, 9 gold ducats tumbled out with mischievous laughter. One had to chase after them playfully. But they found other things, too. 2 door handles at the bottom of a chest, Swiss francs in a book, set aside against the eventuality of flight. In the cottage cheese crock, wrapped in newspaper, a pendant, an earring, in the master's desk, a 1/4 pound of Russian tea, in a paper bag, a pound of lentils, 2 tins of Belgian sardines. Vésinet, who was perpetually tormented by the obsession that she would be reduced to beggary and die of hunger, saw that she was richer than she had thought. More surprises still awaited her. Anna pulled from the bottom of the wardrobe the miller blue skirt she had long believed lost, and a blouse, the salmon-colored silk blouse which, as she recalled, she had given to some Swabian woman from Soroksar during one of the bundling episodes. They also found spools of thread, buttons, scraps of leather large and small, for in her mania she preserved every last scrap and rag. Nor was this any wonder nowadays. In those bitter 2 years, she had gradually learned that life is nothing and matter is everything. After all, she too had read in the newspaper that the Austrian army valued a living human being, heart and brain included, at a mere 36 gold crowns, far less than a fully equipped horse. Why then should she, of all people, not have lost her sense of proportion as to what was valuable and what was not? Intoxicated, she gazed at omnipotent matter. She even vowed to economize still more henceforth. In the courtyard garden, she had Anna dig up the brass mortar, which she had hidden at the foot of an elder tree to save it from the various requisitions. This brass mortar, once the pride of the kitchen, which had nearly become a cannonball, rescued from the tempests of the stormy century, rose from its temporary grave, earthy and tarnished. Upstairs, the apartment had to be restored to its former state. They pulled aside the wardrobes that had been placed there on account of the terrible, billeted tenants. Greater disorder arose than before. The furniture migrated. An armchair, as if lost, got stranded in the corridor, squinting down the staircase as though it did not know how to descend, but would have liked to. The pendulum clock lay in a state of suspended animation on the floor, in its wooden case, alongside an egg whisk. Down in the courtyard, the tables went on excursions. Wicker chairs and divans sunned themselves, as did the daybed, stripped of its red cover. Anna stood from morning till evening in a halo of dust and rubbish. She spat black and sneezed gray. She beat the mattresses as if she bore them a grudge. She dashed up to the apartment and down to the courtyard 100 times over. The window panes streamed, the dirty water splashed in the buckets, the rags slapped. Lashed to the crossbars, she wiped the windows. Already she was scrubbing the floor, already waxing it with pale wax, already dancing on the brushes, strapped to her feet, already polishing the parquet, sliding, stooping, kneeling, as in a church, in some long, unending act of adoration. Sandpaper rasped on rusty locks. Bring down the rugs hidden in the attic, unwrap them from their naphtha-scented bundles, beat them on the rack. Quick, this chair over there. Quick, that table over here, push the piano a little further forward. Only the chandeliers left to hang up, but carefully, so we don't break them. Screw in a bulb or two, just the cream-colored curtains onto the gilt moldings, sew on the brass rings, and we are done. They finished by evening. The entrance hall, which had become a dump for the accumulated filth, was likewise gleaming within an hour. Vésinet took her husband's arm. She led him in ceremoniously.
Oh, look.
Well, well.
What do you say?
Yes, indeed, yes, indeed.
Isn't it?
Welcoming. Much more welcoming.
There was no question this was different. This pale, ailing apartment, upon which the dust of many years had settled like a patina of history, had suddenly recovered. Vizzy, in the study, trod upon a Persian rug. He examined its patterns with curiosity. Morello cherry-colored little birds on slender branches.
Which one is this?
You see, you don't even recognize it. The one that used to be beside your bed. She cleaned it with sauerkraut.
Everything seemed new, as if received as a gift. In the salon, that crammed bazaar, the coffee pots and jugs gleamed. The pest factory wares and the provincial objects that piety had preserved from generation to generation. The cigar cutter glittered on the chess table. Every clock was running. On the heads of porcelain rabbits, on the chests of bronze horses, a hidden mechanism softly tick-tocked. Even the ancestors had appeared, returned from their exile. Vizzy's late father, in a black frog tunic with a silver-tasseled cravat, hung on the wall. His wife's bishop relation, Camillo Patacarius, with a purple sash and a yellow smile on pious, priestly lips. Then one of the woman's great aunts, Theresia Patacarius, with a swan-feathered ballroom fan. Vizzy straightened a picture. He rubbed his hands. He did not even go out that evening. Vizine raised her index finger.
This girl is clean. What I like about her is that she is extraordinarily clean and skilled, too.
It was undeniable that she was now more a captive than she had been with any of her other servants. For the time being, she could not budge from her side. But it was certain that this one could not be mentioned in the same breath as the rest. Such valuable material, worth the trouble. One only had to educate her, to polish her completely. She had even begun to eat. Gradually she consumed the wartime substitutes, the ersatz coffee, the saccharin, the margarine, for she was no glutton, no bread guzzler, not greedy. She rose at 4:30 in the morning and did not lie down until every task was done. She did not gossip, nor did she pull faces. She left behind only her work, like some invisible good spirit. What more could one wish for? And every blessed day brought new discoveries, which, like a courier bearing glad tidings, she reported to her husband.
Come, please, just for a moment. Just come out with me. I want to show you something.
In the kitchen, the brass mortar had taken its rightful place on a wooden block. Cleavers, cake molds, whisking bowls, baking trays, frying pans, pastry cutters sparkled on the walls. On the shelves, without having been told, she had spread blue paper, which she had scalloped with scissors. She would bring a trophy into the study and place it silently on the writing desk.
Plum preserves. She put them up herself. Look at this gorgeous sugary juice, like a ruby. She has a feel for it, and a gift.
They ate puff pastry.
Well, how is it? What magnificent flaky butter pastry this is. It peels right off. A born cook. This girl has proved herself.
Vizzy was softening, but he did not yield. Strangely, before this he had always defended even the bad servants to pacify his wife. This time, however, he had assumed the role of the opposition, which exercises benevolent scrutiny over the ruling government. He let the praises pass, in one ear and out the other. She came forward with petty, trifling objections, that Anna was somewhat cheerless, never in good spirits, as though she were even sullen, and that she scarcely spoke. Vizine explained how mistaken she was. Sometimes she did in fact smile. And what was she supposed to do? Why should she be in good spirits? A maid who works constantly is not ill-tempered. She is merely modest. Or perhaps we want this one to be as insolent as the rest. God forbid. Everything had been cleared up by now. Only one point remained somewhat obscure. The most important, most delicate point, stealing. Did this decent girl steal? This was the hardest thing to verify. Theft comes unexpectedly, insidiously, like a stroke in the night. Suddenly, something is missing, some perfectly insignificant item. We think it has been mislaid, or that we put it somewhere else, We think we are not remembering correctly, or perhaps we lost it, but that is not the truth. The truth is that it is gone, simply gone. What a paralyzing terror to wake to such a thing. Even the objects still in their place become suspect. Every silver spoon, every sugar cube, every handkerchief is suspect. How many are there? Where are they? Did you lock them away? Vizine did lock everything away. She did not give in so easily. She experimented methodically. One evening, she left a Soviet 25-crown note on a piece of furniture. In the morning, the money was still there. She dropped, as if by accident, a blue 100-crown note on the floor. The next day, it too had flown back to her bedside table. She left a ring forgotten on the divan. Anna found it while tidying, and this time she handed it over in person. Then, as a lure, she left open that wardrobe in which her handkerchiefs stood carefully stacked and counted. Not one of them sprouted legs. Next came the foodstuffs, the coffee, the sugar, which maids are particularly fond of pilfering. She did not lock the pantry. For a whole week she did not so much as glance at it. But when she went in to inspect with candle in hand and precise inventory, she saw that every single coffee bean, every lump of sugar, was in its place. This girl, then, did not steal. She said so, but did not yet believe it. Then she no longer said it, but believed it, she and her husband both. This one needed neither money, nor jewelry, nor spice.
You know what she needs?
She asked her husband, and answered with Fixer's former declaration.
Work. Work. There has never been one like this.
You are right.
Vizzy agreed.
There has never been one like this.
Both of them felt liberated. Vizzy lived his ministry life, and at home at least he had no cause for vexation. Vizine could even go out now. In the mornings, she strolled to the Buda mineral spring by the Erzsébet Bridge to drink a glass of lukewarm sulphurous water, which, so she found, did her stomach good. She had her teeth put in order by her dentist. She busied herself with the Christina Charitable Society, distributing clothes to the poor children of civil servants in the district. She even had time left over for this and that. She looked in on the Tatars in Uri Utka, where cheerful, handsome young men gathered around the two pretty Tatar girls. She could receive a friend or two as well. She had no real friends, however, for she associated only with the wives of her husband's professional allies. Her relatives, her own large extended family, the Paticarius clan, lived in Egere. Her husband, too, had only a single female relation living here, a divorced woman, that unfortunate Etelka, who went from house to house selling counterfeit Egyptian cigarettes and begging, pestering them as well, utterly gone to seed. They had not been in contact with her for years. Vizzy no longer even acknowledged her in the street. Now it became apparent how utterly alone she was, and how long a day could be. She had Piroska's grave remounded at the Farkasrat cemetery. Every week she brought her a bouquet of chrysanthemums. On Wednesdays she visited the old Spiritist circle which held its sessions in a villa on Rosadomb in Aldous Utka. It was a splendid, austere villa with sliding doors, silk wall hangings, classical paintings and sculptures. The host, a fabulously wealthy gentleman of private means, received his guests with a sympathetic handshake. Everyone knew that the host's son had been struck mute 16 years ago and was somewhere in one of the villa's remote, somber rooms. An infantry general served as the spiritual circle leader. They summoned the spirits of soldiers who had died heroic deaths. Mothers and fathers awaited news of them. Beside Vizine sat an ailing judge of the Curia and a Catholic priest in civilian clothes. The medium, an ecstatic girl, spoke German, with her head thrown back in a trance. invisible spirit wires stretched out from here, enmeshing the entire universe. Peroska's spirit reported in from the planet Jupiter. Through the medium's hand, it filled an entire sheet of paper with her scrawling letters, "Mama, Mama." Once she even materialized upon the medium's breast in a hazy, luminous mist in the form of something like a milky fog. When Vizine walked home from these sessions on Wednesday evenings, she no longer felt the old pounding of her heart. The old nightmare visions no longer pursued her, that she would find a ransacked flat, with doors broken in, cupboards forced open and emptied. At home, everything was in order. She even left her money lying about unguarded. Gone were those times when she paced her rooms with hands clasped behind her back, as though fettered in chains, wondering what on earth that maid might be plotting. Anna moved softly around them, and the moment she left the room, the conversation turned to her. They were united now in their appreciation, in a shared, fond sentiment. It was unquestionably admiration, adoration, uncritical idolization that the acquired commodity should prove so useful, and a certain pride, too, that she was theirs alone. Retiring to their bedroom, they would whisper the day's events to each other, all of which testified to her sense of duty, her self-sacrifice, her tirelessness. Supporting and supplementing each other, outdoing and outbidding each other's words, they characterized and imitated her, sometimes mocking her too, with indulgent smiles, as though it were comical that anyone could be so good-natured and simple, so exemplarily decent, so unprecedentedly modest, and they laughed, at first timidly, then in convulsive guffaws. Thus began for them that idyll whose savor they tasted constantly. No mirage was playing tricks on them. Surpassing their wildest imagination, the impossible had come true. They had found the real one, the one they had dreamed of for so long. And at times, a mischievous, itching feeling teased them too, that they should fall upon her bosom, thank her for this benefaction, or perhaps go to a photographer's studio together, but in secret and at night, and have themselves photographed as a threesome, like a family, but from this wanton, exceedingly peculiar thought, which could only have flashed through their brains for the 1,000th part of a second, in jest, and vanished before they could properly think it through and laugh it out, they were restrained by their bourgeois sobriety and the awareness that, when all was said and done, this was merely a domestic employee. A debate on sponge cake, mercy, and equality. Conditions were improving. True, there was still much trouble. Day by day, the crown was plunging. People watched their neighbors with depressed spirits, poised to pounce. They scribbled anonymous letters about one another. Those who would previously have been ashamed to acknowledge that their friends were good communists now, swiftly and obligingly, presented them before the authorities with the official recognition so long withheld. The city, as if after a plague of locusts, lay plundered and stripped bare on a rubbish heap. Up above, in the window of the Baroque confectionery, a solitary, leathery scone sat mournfully on fine porcelain. Red-painted trams could still be seen hurtling along with incendiary slogans like unleashed suicidal madmen. But several signs were encouraging. On the trams, for instance, passengers now dared to rebuke a tyrannical conductress who had been rude to the genteel public, rubbing it under her nose that there was no more Bolshevism, and men, as in the old days, gave up their seats to ladies. The beautiful rose of the Middle Ages bloomed again. Chivalry. Viator stood outside his shop door, and once again he greeted people. In this one could not be disappointed. He always showed precisely which way the wind was blowing. When the war broke out, he merely nodded his head. Later on, it was his customers who began to offer greetings. At first, He accepted this. Then as Bolshevism approached, he no longer noticed them in his manifold preoccupations. Now he offered Vizine that she might have the odd thing sent home by his errand boy. She need only ring him on the telephone. At the Vizis, impromptu gatherings assembled. One afternoon, the Gabor Tatars came. Druma popped down too with his wife and Movistern. Bourgeois life had lit its modest chandeliers. They still illuminated much want and shabbiness, but it felt good all the same to be together after so much suffering, in the old luster of entertaining. The afternoon tea was rather dreary. Tatarne presided at the head of the table with her swelling, corseted bosom. They attempted to launch one or another damp squib of a counter-revolutionary witticism, but it no longer popped. Druma produced an orange from his pocket, which one of his clients had smuggled across the Italian border. The long unseen fruit was passed from hand to hand. They talked of foodstuffs, of various sources of supply, where one could get cheaper flour, potatoes. Counselor Tatar, a celebrated cook, recalled a fish paprikash he had made himself in his bachelor days on the bank of the Tisa, over an open fire, from catfish, sterlet, and carp. He could describe such things in such detail and with such relish that the salivary glands began to function. Then he too fell silent and merely ate, nibbled, while his fine red mouth moved, framed by the gray mustache and beard like some shaggy furrier's wear. Into this hole he deposited his food. The conversation faltered and stalled.
"That's right,"
said Drumain in the general silence.
"Anna, where is Anna? I haven't even seen her today."
In the kitchen, preparing the tea things.
The new maid?
Asked Tatarn.
Is she a good girl? Capable? Your flat is gleaming. And reliable too? Tell me, dear, does she steal?
Vizine did not deign to answer, merely measured her with a look.
You don't know Anna? The women marveled in chorus.
No. I have not yet had the pleasure. I have not been introduced,
joked Tatarni with the imperturbable confidence of a matron. They laughed at this. Vizine glanced at her husband and rang the bell. Anna brought the almond sponge cake on a glass dish in her blue cotton dress. She had not even had time to change. Her shoes clattered. She came forward self-consciously to the table, stopped there, and set the dish down. She wanted to kiss everyone's hand one by one, but there were so many of them that in the end, she kissed no one's hand. Around her, she saw the smiling faces of the guests. Tatar, too, had stopped eating and craned his stocky neck towards her. Vizine savored the silent tableau for a while, then beckoned her over and with a humorous, yet boastful circular gesture pointed to her.
Yes, this is Anna, my Anna.
No sooner had the door closed behind her than a burst of laughter erupted, like the moment a celebrated comedienne exits the stage. They did not even know what they were laughing at, but they laughed. The whole thing was amusing, this awkwardness, these clattering shoes, and the introduction scene. The mood brightened, cigars and cigarettes were lit. Vizzy told some story about Anna, which was met with guffaws. Into these guffaws stepped Movister, the old doctor, who, having finished his consultations and sent off his last patient, had come for his wife. Movister had to do mass work. Once, in his youth, he had been an assistant at a Berlin clinic, a specialist in heart disease. On coming to Hungary, he applied for a lectureship, but the university would not grant him his habilitation. After that, he lived as best he could. He saw patients 10 hours a day, burying himself in the human material he found in the public hospitals and the workers' insurance fund, mechanically kneading sick humanity. Leaning on his stick, he dragged his weary body. When he smiled, one could see his rickety teeth, his inflamed gums. A few strands of seaweed-like hair waved on the crown of his head. The doctor was sicker than any of his patients. He had diabetes in its final stage. Every colleague, every clinic had given him up. Vizi hurried to meet him and assured him that he was looking much better than last time. Movister thanked him for this with a sardonic smile. He squinted and peered about uncertainly in the smoke of cigarettes and cigars. He too felt as though, blundering among the wings, he had stumbled accidentally onto the stage, into the noisy scene of an unknown play. He did not understand what all the merriment was about. They had to explain to him that it was about Anna, the famous Anna. Vizi, by popular demand, repeated the little story that had given such amusement. Movister ate nothing. He withdrew with the men into the study. He did not drink either. He merely clinked glasses, with the others so affably that he seemed to be keeping pace. Later, the men drifted out into the dining room, cigarettes and cigars between their lips, their faces flushed from wine, to join the women. Tatar leaned against the doorpost, listening to what they were saying.
"Still the servant question?"
he exclaimed in mock horror, thrusting out his mild paunch, across which the white silk waistcoat stretched handsomely.
Honestly, women, they simply cannot talk about anything else.
But the men were interested too, and lent half an ear. Vizi brought the wine back to the dining room. Movister sat down in the rocking chair and rocked himself, with his eyes shut. The discourse was about Anna.
"Do you know,"
said Drumain,
"that she is actually pretty? She has quite a charming little face, and her figure too, slender, really quite pleasant."
"Yes,"
philosophized Tatarn.
"These peasant girls smarten up quickly here in Pest. Mine too, you know, my Bawsey. I had her brought up from the village last year. She was thin, ragged, like a scarecrow. I fattened her up nicely, of course, and dressed her too. I bought her a white pique dress."
And she cleared her throat, as she did when preparing to tell a story.
"On Sundays, my girls have a little party. Buzzy opens the door for the guests. In comes Irvin Golovsky, the one who just came home from Russian captivity. Well, this young man, you know."
And she smiled in advance at what she was about to say.
"In the vestibule, he kisses my hand, then goes and stands before Bawsey, introduces himself formally, and is already extending his hand."
"To the maid?"
asked Vizine.
"To the maid, indeed. If I hadn't signaled, he would have shaken her hand, too."
And here she cackled, her asthmatic chest heaving with the cough.
"He thought,"
she said, choking,
"that she was one of Ilonka's or Margitka's friends."
"And what did your maid do?"
"She turned crimson. She hid her hands behind her back, rushed into the kitchen, and, imagine, cried. She cried the whole afternoon, and nothing on earth could make her go in and serve. As for Irvin, the girls teased him mercilessly."
Tatar beckoned his wife. "The cat?"
"Oh, yes,"
said Tatarn.
"The cat. When she started with us, we had a 2-month-old kitten, Ilonka's kitten, Kermos, this big, like my fist. In the morning, I hear Bawsey giving it milk and calling, 'Come here, please, Kermos, here's your breakfast.' She addressed the cat with the formal 'you.' For a long time, she did not dare use the familiar form. Well, yes, that is how they are. Unfortunately, their eyes open quite early, earlier than they should. Already, she wants to go home all the time. If it isn't a village fair, it's a grape harvest, a wedding, and her whole clan is forever on my back."
"Mine,"
said Drumain.
"My Steffi goes to the cinema and dabbles in politics. A great Christian."
"Mine,"
said Movistern.
"Etel gives orders. Insofar as we obey, she does not give us notice."
"Mine,"
remarked Vizine amid great attention, having listened to these complaints with malicious satisfaction.
"goes neither to the cinema nor to the theatre. She does not even sing. She has no sweetheart. I have never even seen her family. She is an orphan. She sits at home all the time. So far she has not gone out even on a Sunday afternoon."
"Ah, but Anna is different."
Such a murmur of approbation arose that she almost felt the success excessive. And now that she found herself the center of attention, she deflected it modestly.
"But you must not complain either. And besides, this is not for nothing. I have taken great pains, and she too has her faults."
"What?"
snapped Vizzy, offended, lifting his head from the fog of his vinous state.
"Tell me, please, what fault does she have?"
Vizine searched for faults in her but found none. What indeed could one find where there was nothing? She could not think of a reply. A clamor of approval arose. The clamor, however, subsided at once, for in came the person they had been discussing. Anna was clearing the table. Now they observed her more closely than ever, weighing her every movement. She darted between the table and the sideboard with fairy-like speed. She moved back and forth like some hushed automaton. Like a machine, they thought. Like a machine. When she placed the sponge cake on the sideboard, Vizine, as if struck by a charming idea, said,
Anna, bring that here.
The guests rose and formed a circle around Vizine so that the company froze for a moment into a tableau with the maid at its center, the principal figure of the sculptural group. Movister stopped his rocking chair and leaned forward slightly. Vizine cut 2 slices of sponge cake and handed them to Anna.
These are for you.
The faces brightened. Almsgiving, pious feelings swelled in their bosoms at the thought of rewarding this fine girl. But she had scarcely taken the plate with the 2 slices of sponge cake before she pushed it back.
Thank you.
Why? Perhaps you don't like it?
No. Thank you. I don't like it.
A painful silence fell. Vizine's firm voice broke it.
In that case, my dear, put it back nicely. By no means. I shall not force you. You may go.
The guests stood about in their circle, their faces wearing the brightness that had now congealed into bewilderment. The odious helplessness of having been rebuffed hovered over them.
She refused it?
Marveled Tatarn.
Not at all.
Vizine explained.
She is like this. She does not eat anything fine. She even leaves the apricot jam. What do you think, for instance, she has for supper? You will never guess. Nothing. Coffee in the morning. For lunch, just a little stew. She wants nothing else. And sponge cake, it seems, she simply does not like.
Or perhaps she likes it very much indeed,
said Movister, still leaning forward in the rocking chair.
How do you mean, Doctor?
I mean that she likes sponge cake very much indeed.
But she herself said she doesn't like it.
Precisely.
Forgive me, I don't understand.
Servants, you see, do not even dare to like what they like, so they convince themselves that what is good is not good. It is how they defend themselves, perhaps against suffering too much. Why covet something that can never be theirs? And they are right. Otherwise they could not go on living.
But what am I to do with her?
Try it sometime. Give her sponge cake every day.
Sponge cake?
Yes. A great deal of sponge cake, so much she could not possibly eat it all. And you will see that she likes it, that it is only sponge cake she likes.
But whatever for? She isn't ill. A special diet for the maid?
As if that belonged in their stomachs?
Grumbled Tatarn.
That would be a fine thing. Sponge cake.
Those twisted theories of yours, McCloskam.
Druma called across to the doctor, who was already rocking himself again, eyes closed. Movistern lit a cigarette, went through to the drawing room, and began playing a foxtrot on the piano. The women left the men. Vizzy poured. The gentlemen sat back down. They rinsed the acrid taste away with wine. Tatar, having wiped his dripping mustache with his handkerchief, returned to this sponge cake business which had lodged in his brain. He addressed Movister.
And yet, dear doctor, these people are simply different from us. Their stomachs are different. Their souls are different. Servants, and they want to remain so. They positively demand that we regard them as servants. The other day, for instance, I ring up a friend's flat. Some strange voice was on the telephone. The employee? I ask. No, answered the voice, but quite insolently. The maid? You should have heard it. I was so taken aback I did not know what to make of it. I just stood there holding the receiver, in which that voice was still crackling, furious with provocative arrogance. They practically relish saying the word, I assure you, if only to goad us, to give offense.
He took a small sip of the topaz yellow wine and continued.
After all, much has been tried, you know, with kindness. I, too, had a friend, the late Carci Zelendi, God rest his soul. A decent fellow, only a touch eccentric. All those theories went to his head. He ate plants, he wore leather sandals. He even visited Tolstoy once, at Yasnaya Polyana. When he came back, he resolved to solve the question radically. He hired a maid, some 50-year-old widow, and informed her that they were perfectly equal, that in his house there was neither master nor servant, mere chance determined who served whom, and at the very first dinner he sat her at the table. There, between his wife and children at the family table, he told me himself how that dinner went. Well, it was pitiful. That wretched woman felt dreadfully ill at ease amid all that tremendous honor. She just sat there fidgeting in her greasy, food-smelling skirt, hiding her hands under the table, touching her face, and did not utter a word throughout the entire meal. She was tired, poor soul, after all. She had been cooking and baking since dawn. In short, at the end of dinner, without a word, and she got dressed, announced that she would not stay another minute in such a place, and she left at once.
Arguing with himself, he was still arguing with the doctor, aiming his sharpened points at him.
Now I ask you, why did she leave? And
He pressed his forefinger against his fleshy nose until it quite flattened.
because no matter how they pressed her, she would not say. Well, I shall tell you. She left because she had more sense than her employer. She left because she felt it was against nature, that it was not even sincere. What would have been sincere was if my self-sacrificing, magnanimous friend had offered her then and there his house, his estate, down to the last cow, down to the last nail. These simple people who stand on the lowest rung of society live in extremes. They have far greater powers of imagination than we suppose. They are not satisfied with half measures. They want to be masters, but entirely masters, or they want to be servants, but entirely servants. Either or. The rest is play acting, like the Romans. They too put on such performances, but and here he paused, only once a year. On one of their feast days, I cannot recall which, the patricians dressed as slaves, the slaves were laid at their tables, and the masters themselves served them honeyed wine and roast capon. In memory, they said, of the golden age, when all men were equal. But when was that? Mythology. They themselves no longer remembered, and we even less. Our very hands are not alike.
And he held up his plump, soft hand, which indeed resembled no one else's here.
There is no human equality, there is only human difference, Doctor, but for heaven's sake...
He worked himself up artificially in the manner of passionate debaters.
There have always been masters, and there have always been servants. It has always been so, and it always will be. Full stop. We cannot change that. So let them remain servants.
He looked around. He had scored a great success. The company, whose cause he had defended, gathered gratefully about him. Tatar had already set down his full stop, but turning to the doctor, he drew the final conclusion.
There is no other solution.
But there is,
said Movister, who in the rocking chair had been absently fingering the medal of the Virgin Mary, dangling from his watch chain.
I am curious to hear it. What is this solution?
Asked Tatar, raising his stout, intelligent head.
mercy.
Mercy.
Repeated Tatar, pleased that the debate had received fresh fuel.
There is a country where everyone is servant and master at once, and equal, always, every day of the year.
Which country is that?
The kingdom of Christ.
That is up above in the clouds.
It is in the soul.
But try bringing it about down here, with the Bolsheviks, with the comrades.
Nor does it need to be brought about.
Said Movister irritably, for his illness made him nervous.
It does not. The communists, too, made the mistake of wanting to realize an ideal. No ideal should ever be realized. That would be the end of it. Let it remain up there among the clouds. That is how it works and how it lives.
I beg your pardon, but would you, Doctor, seat your maid at your table?
No.
Why not?
Perhaps because,
he reflected,
she does not expect it, and it would indeed be play acting, for the time being at least, here on earth.
Then we are grinding in the same mill.
Not quite, Councillor, for in my soul my maid is always seated at my table.
Very well,
said Tatar, wrinkling his vaulted brow.
Why not? But I shall tell you something. Your maid, dear doctor, would hardly seat you at her table if she came into money. What tyrants they become the moment they scrape together a little wealth. I have seen the like. Straight away they keep a maid, and how cruel they are to her, how heartless. God preserve us from the poacher turned gamekeeper. There is nothing more terrible than to be the servant of a servant. In them there truly is no mercy.
That is no concern of mine.
Pardon me,
began Tatar, who now wished to steer the debate onto a different plane.
You do, I take it, love humanity?
I don't love it at all.
I beg your pardon?
I do not love it because I have never seen it, because I do not know it. Humanity is a dead concept. And observe, Councillor, that every swindler loves humanity. The man who is selfish, who will not give his brother a crust of bread, who is treacherous, his ideal is humanity. They hang and murder people, but they love humanity. They defile their family sanctuaries, they cast out their wives, they do not care about their fathers, mothers, children, but they love humanity. There is nothing more convenient. After all, it obliges one to nothing. No one will ever come before me and introduce himself by saying, I am humanity. Humanity does not ask for food, does not ask for clothes, but remains at a decent distance in the background, with a halo upon its lofty brow. There is only Peter and Paul. There are people. There is no humanity.
And the fatherland?
That too,
said Movister, and paused, searching for the right expression.
You know, that too is something very fine and very spacious as a concept, too large. How many crimes are committed in its name?
But whom do you love, then?
The priests.
Druma teased.
Miklos loves the priests. Or the Reds? I am no longer sure myself. Come now!
He threatened the doctor.
Beneath your skin you are red. Don't deny it, McCloskam.
And he embraced him so tightly that Movister's thin shoulder blades cracked.
Well, God bless you. Drink, old Bolshevik.
Druma painted in flaming colors what the Reds had done to a 60-year-old lady of rank who had been imprisoned with him in the collection jail. Every blessed night, at the stroke of midnight, they marched her out into the yard, telling her she was to be executed, made her kneel, made her pray, aimed their rifles at her forehead, and took aim for minutes on end. Vizzy pointed out his dining room and drawing room, which had been de facto requisitioned from him.
Of course, that is what they want.
Fumed Tatar.
A world historical role reversal. To bring you lot down from here into the basement flat and to raise the caretaker's lot up here. Round and round, like the two buckets on a well. I have no doubt that the caretakers would make excellent gentlemen too, but for that you would need at least 3 centuries. First he would have to eat his fill, grow fat, then grow tired of the good life. His sons would have to ride and fence, as ours do.
Their spines would have to straighten a little, their limbs lengthen. Meanwhile, we too would nicely accustom ourselves to the basement flat and the beans, and we would waste away. The only trouble is, it would take rather a long time. And what would be the point? There would be no point at all. The rat of revolution lay at their feet. It was already dead. But they killed it once more for good measure. They passed on to questions of current politics. Vizzy had been silent until now, for he did not like to expose himself, and moreover, he considered all theoretical debate sterile. All at once he took the floor. He spoke of departments, committees, reorganization. This was the moment when everyone should have seen him. Our time will come, he said, placing his hand on Gabor Tatar's shoulder, to make the solidarity more physical, as if seeking a comrade in arms for the great struggle. And from his eyes, as always at such moments, there shot a strange sidelong glance, a furtive little look that bespoke readiness and rapacity and was animated by the most sordid thought of self-interest, which, however, thanks to his self-discipline, he was able in that very instant to conceal and transform into a burning zeal for the public good. As for the aim of politics, which he had served from his youth under various governments with equal devotion, he formulated it briefly and succinctly thus: the elimination of corruption. He took care not to translate this Latin word into Hungarian, for fear that it would become transparent and lose its Catonian severity. He left it as it was, cloaked in its veiled, passionate generality, and did not clarify even to himself that politics is always merely the jostling of hungry men, which necessarily bears the frailties of life, and every regime seizes power only to place its partisans in positions and to weaken and crush its opponents. Corruption, for him, was always what others represented, those who had themselves driven in state motor cars to their mistresses, and he condemned this all the more because he remembered how sweet it had been one night to race through the park under the trees with an operetta actress in a state motor car that a friend had lent him for the occasion, and what a pleasant intoxication had filled him when, at the journey's end, the capped chauffeur saluted deferentially, far more eagerly than if he had received a generous tip. Movister grew bored. He rocked a while longer in the rocking chair, then stole across to the drawing room, where the women had settled around the chess table, their heads together. They still could not finish with the subject that in there had set off the men's debate. Vizine soliloquized in lamentation.
It is true that she works hard enough. But tell me, what else should she do?
She asked irritably.
She has her board here, her lodgings. She will get clothes as well. She can put her wages aside. What more does she want in these hard times? What is the matter with her? She does not have to maintain this large flat, rack her brains every day over what to cook, how to get hold of money. She just lives without a care, free. I often say that nowadays only maids have it good.
The women sighed, like so many women who had missed their vocation, and regretted that in this cruel world no circumstances whatever would permit them to be maids. The doctor beckoned his wife over with his finger. He complained of fatigue. He always went to bed before 10, for at 7 he was already hanging from the trams to get out to the hospital. Movistern stubbed out her cigarette. The Tatars, too, were getting ready. They wanted to get home before the gates were locked. Drumaine in the hallway pressed her ear to the closed kitchen door.
What is she doing?
Working, no doubt,
said Vizine.
Leave her.
But Drumaine had already opened the door. In the dark kitchen, by the rubbish bin, a figure stood, holding a black man's shoe. She was polishing it. Good night, Anna. Farewell now. God bless you. Various voices rang out. Anna murmured something.
What does she say?
She begs your pardon.
Vizine translated her words.
She cannot come to open the door. Her hands are boxers.
What is boxos?
Inquired Druma.
The pest maids call shoe polish box.
Boxos?
Drummer repeated.
Well now, I didn't know that either. Boxos.
And even on the staircase, as he went up to his flat, he was amused that her hands were boxos, that they were boxos. Legend. The Vizzies chewed over the memories of that tea party for a long time.
Did you hear? That I should give my maid sponge cake. Sponge cake.
Mad, mad.
And that she only likes this. Unheard of.
But later he came out with other things too. His crackpot theories, you know him. Then Tartar gave him a thorough dressing down.
I'm certainly not going to make a prima donna out of her. That would be the last straw.
He seems to have lost his wits. A sick man. I give him 2 months. His sugar is so high, you know, he does not even have it measured anymore. Did you see? Here too the flies kept settling on him. He was constantly shooing them away. Poor wretch. We shall be burying him before long too. What will become of his wife?
But you are to blame too. Tell me, why did you have to trumpet it to the whole company that she hasn't a single fault? They may yet lure her away.
The doctor had infuriated Vizine. Out of sheer spite, she tightened the leash around Anna. She had never kept a char. Now, she pressed Anna into that role as well. Once a week, she had her scrub the staircase, had her clean out the attic, turned a blind eye when the fixor sent her running here and there when she had nothing else to do. Anna took out the rubbish. When the long, unheard little dawn bell of the dust cart rang, one could see her loping out to Attila Utka, with the rubbish bins of all 3 tenants, emptying their dusty black contents into the cart in the sunlight. She was also given a basket full of stockings to darn, so that she would not grow bored in her spare time. Vizine expressed her satisfaction in trifling words. To the fixors, she said only that Anna would do. It almost pained her to say so little, for the happiness was bursting out of her, but she shouldered it in the interests of upbringing. She presented herself as harder than she truly was. On the 15th of September, Anna's first month was up. She paid her wages then, not as much as Katika, who had been overpaid, but she held out the prospect that in time she would give a raise. Nor did she deduct the full cost of the mirror, only half. Anna had no need for money. She asked Vizine to put it in the bank or buy her something. Vizine bought her a kerchief at the weekly market in Roham Utka. On the 5th Sunday, she sent her out herself to go and have a look around the city. Anna put on the checked dress she had arrived in. On the granite cobblestones of the streets, the desolate light of the holiday trembled. This workless, endless stretch of free time gaped meaninglessly before her. She loitered in front of gateways. Then, drifting along Logodi Utka without aim or plan, she reached a square where there was a church and a large hospital, and such a clamor as when crows caw in the sky at the end of autumn. Maid servants were promenading here. Swabian maids giggled, whispered, arm in arm. They chattered in their unintelligible language, as they did in their villages, together, always together. They formed chains on the curb islands, around the gas lamps, holding up pedestrians, blocking the traffic. The trams, too, had to ring their bells more vigorously in order to pass. She plodded along among them, alone. On the way back, by the Vermezo, a Romanian soldier pinched her breast. She retreated into a gateway and waited until the soldier was gone. Near the Delhi railway station, she bought potato sweets from a street vendor and took them to Little Bandika in Arokutka. Maids who visit their former employers all enter with the same words, "I've come, if you don't mind." The employers do not mind that they have come. In the habitual course of their lives, it represents a certain variety. And as, after a moment's hesitation, they recognize the former girl, who is a shade thinner or fatter and in any case older, they too recall the time that has passed since then. Before them stands a guest, whom they treat as a guest. They try to offer her this and that. The visitors, however, stand about with even greater awkwardness, under the weight of even heavier memories, in that room whose every object they know better than their employers. Their arms, which labored here so long, hang down idle and useless. They no longer have the right to behave as much at home as they once did, when willy-nilly they had been honorary members of the family. Moreover, they are paralyzed by the awareness that in their absence the family's life went on just as before, and however warmly they are received, they feel that they are not indispensable. Everyone feels this now and again, but they feel it wholly and stormingly, and unconsciously saddened when they pay these dutiful visits with a pained, dull-witted expression. Only the dead who walk again could feel this so completely. Anna handed the potato sweets to little Bandika, who gave her in return the toy trumpet as a keepsake. Bandika gazed at her pensively. He rummaged among muddled memories in his small head. The potato sweets had done their work. He climbed into the lap of the one he had once loved more than anyone, and whom, at 2.5, he had called not Anna, but Mama. But when the girl began to talk about the penknife with the birds, from which so many, many birds would fly out, he was no longer listening. He had forgotten the penknife with the birds. Anna said her farewells, and by the time she got back to the house at 238 Attila Utka, it was not yet 6 o'clock. Still, it was better at home. In the mornings, Vizine sat in the kitchen. There was no longer any need to supervise her servant. But is there anything more interesting than the kitchen? That laboratory of life? Here one hears what happened at the market, in the city, what the Movisters and the Drumas are cooking, and one can watch Anna's endlessly entertaining fussing. The dishes that appear on her table at noon, after their magical transformation, still lie about in their raw state. Water gurgles in the iron pot, the water for the beef broth. The carrots boil, the leeks, the kohlrabi, the celery, the black pepper in the salty, effervescent liquid, strained through empty eggshells. The little pots simmer and bubble over, too. The girl reaches up to the shelf for saffron and ginger, slices the onion into thin slivers, weeps from the spice stinging her nose, grinds walnuts and bread rolls, chops parsley, cracks eggs, separates the yolks from the whites, scrapes carrots, joints a rabbit, and tosses the floured meat into the pan, where the hot fat is already sizzling. There was only one thing she could not undertake, the killing of chickens. At such times, she ran upstairs for Attell, called her down to carry out this everyday, thrilling murder of the kitchen. The old servant cheerfully gathered up the chosen victims, carried them to the sink drain, and there, with one deft movement, wrung their necks and cut them with the big kitchen knife so that the blood spattered up to her elbows and often stained her face as well. Anna turned away. Visinay could not bear to watch either. She acknowledged that it was necessary, but she kept asking Etel how she could do such a thing. Etel said with a laugh that what must be done must be done. Visinay let Anna know that she did not like her spending so much time with those servants. Etel was not her sort. She was a crabby old hag, impudent, loud-mouthed, and Steffi looked down on her anyway. She would not even walk down the street with her. What did she want from them? They laughed at her behind her back. Once or twice she even denied Anna, would not let them in to see her, lied that she was not at home. Anna saw that her mistress was right. She did not much seek the company of the servants. Why chase after a cart that will not pick you up? She preferred to sit mending in the kitchen. A chick cheeped around her. She herself had brought it out of the coop to raise. She knew every chicken individually by its plumage, by its voice. As a country girl, she regarded chickens as birds. She gave them water from little bowls, fed them crumbs, petted them. At night, the chick perched on her bed and slept at her feet. During these kitchen sessions together, the mistress told stories about Peroska, and she about her stepmother, that gaunt young peasant woman who had driven her from home on a winter night. Fixer had written to her father, Istvanides, that his daughter had taken a new position, but he never wrote back, as if he cared, and she gradually thawed in this environment. She no longer mentioned the Bartoses, her former employers, nor did the mistress speak any more of Katika, the former servant, all that had passed. She began to take pride in the fact that her masters were much wealthier than the Movisters or the Drumas. She was pleased when she received a new rolling pin. She called the sieve our sieve, the corkscrew our corkscrew, which was always finer than the ones upstairs. She admired Visinay's dresses too, especially that black silk one she wore on Wednesday afternoons when she went to Alda Shucha. Visinay joked, "You see, I put this on just for you." Nor was this servant girl an unpleasant companion. If she was told to step back, she withdrew. The company of servants is as convenient for ladies as the love of streetwalkers is for men. The moment they are no longer needed, they can be sent away. After the great political upheavals, once the smoldering passions had flickered out, Visi spent his evenings at home waiting for supper. They tiptoed around him, for they knew he was working. Silence descended on his beautifully tidied study. On the desk, the pen tray, the sealing wax, the scissors, the stuffed owl stood in orderly rank. He wrote a letter to his brother-in-law in Eger, Ferenc Paticarius, who managed their 5 acres of vineyard there. The letter-writing went slowly. He who dictated his ministry's submissions to his typist with such fluency composed with painful sluggishness when it came to private affairs. He paused at a sentence, reread his letter, blotted it, examined it again, licked the envelope, lit a candle, and pressed his crested signet ring into the seal. Then he yawned. His heart, lungs, liver all functioned well. His stomach digested what he ate, and yet, it seemed, he suffered. He was seized by the boredom of the bureaucratic soul, who is always bored when alone. He wandered out to the kitchen, urging supper along. His wife was amusing herself with the girl, with this transplanted, fresh life. Visi, too, would have liked to stay, but his wife shooed him out of the kitchen. She said they should not disturb Anna. Besides, a servant is not a spectacle. But however much she tried to keep her hidden, she could not quite manage to keep her under a glass dome. The girl called at Viatoris's shop daily. The grocer was already congratulating her with a jovial wink on the phenomenal servant. From this shop, which served as the gossip headquarters for the women of Cristina Varos, everyone learned about her. She was spoken of at the baker's, the butcher's, the laundry. Even the coffin maker knew who Anna was. That stout, imposing policeman who stood his post on Attila Utka and always gave the Vizis a crisp salute also knew her. The news traveled with astonishing speed. First it conquered only the nearest Kristinavaros, Attila Utka, Kristina Ter. Certain points along Kristina Kurut and Attila Kurut, then Pauler Utka, Miko Ucha, Logodi Ucha, and Tabor Ucha as well. But within a week it had soared up to the castle, to Uri Ucha where the Tatars lived, to the Bastia Promenade, to Ferdinand Ter, to Bechikapu Ter, and having burrowed into the brains of women and men, it grew and grew. They spoke of an exemplary servant. Many had not even seen her yet. They knew only her Christian name. She had not yet even taken on a definite form. Those whom the news had reached felt roughly what a superstitious crowd feels upon hearing of a miraculous spring, a healing icon, whose supernatural efficacy the mind cannot grasp, yet which nonetheless exists. After the news had completed its orbit, it returned to them. At the ministry, one of Vizi's friends telephoned to ask whether this Anna might have a sister or an older relative, because he was in need of a reliable servant. Vizine was having her stomach pills made up at the Maria pharmacy. The pharmacist's assistant, as he dropped the granules onto the scales, chatted with her as was his custom, and all at once he too mentioned Anna, that Anna, with an omniscient smile. When Anna appeared at the market, with the straw bag on her arm, the vegetable women whispered together,
Vizi, don't you know him? The counselor at the ministry.
Conversely, if they saw Vizi, they said,
There he is, the one I was telling you about the other day, right there, Anna's master.
In the evenings, the burghers of Kristinavaro strolled with their wives on their arms. Suddenly, the woman stopped in her tracks. She no longer paid attention to what her husband was explaining, but stared at a single point, as though seeing a vision.
Look, she whispered, that's her. Who? Anna? The one who works at the Vizi's Anna.
The man peered this way and that, in the gaslit half-darkness, but saw nothing, for the whole thing had lasted only an instant. That shadow in its blue calico dress, hugging the wall, carrying a freshly baked loaf of bread from the baker, had already darted through the gate into the coffee-colored house and was racing up the stairs. She had vanished from their sight. At such times they waited a while longer, then wandered on in silence, lost in who knows what thoughts.